Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I apologize. Traffic is really a work in progress there. So I apologize for my tardiness, and I'm sure the district managers are managing the same issues. The agencies are bright-eyed here present, so I'm going to start with roll call. This is the Brooklyn Borough President's Borough Service Cabinet meeting. My name is Diana Reina, and I'm the Deputy Brooklyn Borough President. This is the 13th of September. I'd like to call Community Board District Managers. Gerald Esposito, Community Board 1.
Marie Wong.
Thank you, Marie. Robert Perez, Community Board 2. Henry Butler, Community Board 3. Celestina Leon, Community Board 4.
Present.
Thank you. Melinda Perkins, Community Board 5. Craig Hammerman, Community Board 6. Jeremy Laufer, Community Board 7. Michelle George, Community Board 8. Community Board 9. Community Board 10, Josephine Beckman. Community Board 11, Marnie Elias Pavia.
Present.
Community Board 12, Barry Spitzer. Community Board 13, Eddie Mark.
Present.
Community Board 14, Sean Elise Campbell.
Present.
Community Board 15, Laura Singer.
Present.
Community Board 16, Viola Green Walker. Community Board 17, Sharif Frazier. Community Board 18, Dorothy Turano. I'm going to go through the agencies at this moment. ACS, Administration for Children's Services. Brooklyn Public Library. Commission on Human Rights. Con Edison. Department for the Aging. Department of Buildings. Department of City Planning. Department of Citywide Administrative Services. Department of Consumer Affairs. Department of Corrections. Department of Design and Construction. Department of Developmental Disabilities. Department of Environmental Protection. Department of Finance. Department of Health. Department of Homeless Service. Department of Housing, Preservation and Development. Department of Information Technology and Telecommunications. Department of Parks and Recreation. Thank you, Commissioner. Marty Marr is with us. Department of Probation. Department of Sanitation North. Department of Sanitation South. Department of oh, thank you very much. But you're only representing South?
I'm representing Community Affairs, so we're citywide.
So North and South, Department of Sanitation. Department of Transportation.
Here.
Department of Youth, Community and Development. Fire Department. Thank you. Human Resource Administration. Thank you. Mayor's Office, Mayor's Community Assistance Unit. National Grid. NYCHA. New York City Housing Authority. New York City Transit Authority. Office of Emergency Management.
Present.
Police Department North, Police Department South. Small Business Services. U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development.
Present.
Thank you. U.S. Postal Service. Verizon. And 311. And I have my assistant placing phone calls, so we will forward what would be the agencies that are not here as well, just to make sure that we are understanding what the delays are. And I know we're getting back into the swing of things from a summer break. So welcome everyone to our Borough Service Cabinet meeting. This morning, we are joined by the National Grid. I'm going to have Renee introduce her team, so that way we have accurate names. And I know that Thomas McGee, no, I'm sorry. I apologize. Renee, I should have just left it there with Renee. All right, Renee, you do your thing. Come here.
Good morning, everyone.
Please take this mic.
Good morning. Can everyone hear me?
Good morning. So I'm Renee McClure from National Grid Community and Customer Management. I'm the manager of the Brooklyn area. I cover all of Brooklyn for National Grid. And two things. One, we wanted to talk about address some concerns that were brought to our attention in regards to some work that was being done in construction. And then two, on a proactive approach, I had already reached out to the Brooklyn Borough President's office to talk about some new paving requirements that are coming into place. So today we'll have two conversations, one about to address the items that were brought to our attention, and that'll be done by our director, Keith Rooney. And then we'll also have Frank Gill, who's in charge of paving for our company. He will talk about the paving requirements. So at the end of the presentation, if there's any questions, please feel free to ask us any questions, and we'll look to address them accordingly.
Renee, can you just give the names of the people again?
So Frank
Gill, paving
Gill.
requirement.
And Keith Rooney, Director of Community and Customer Management for all of downstate New York. My boss.
Keith, she does a great job.
Thank you.
I work for Renee.
Right, that's a good answer.
All right, so thank you. So
Thank you.
Keith?
I can use this book.
Yes, please, and if you could just use the mic as well, it would be helpful.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody. My name is Keith Rooney. Like Renee said, I'm the director for the Community and Customer and Government Relations for the downstate region, which is Brooklyn, Staten Island, Queens, and all of Long Island. I'm happy to be here today. I'm going to go through a presentation, and I just ask you guys to be patient. I'm going to give you some high-level bullets of what's going on in the business, and then Frank's going to come up and talk about paving specifically with the new DOT rules. So just bear with me, and we'll be happy to answer any questions you may have. How do I which one is? Right. This is just a high-level overview of the group here, and if anybody needs contact information, I'm sure you'd be happy to email them. It has all of the jurisdictional managers for every region in the city and Long Island, and including all of our phone numbers, including my boss, who's Melanie Littlejohn. So if anybody wants this deck, I'm sure you'd be able to email that out with all the proper contacts.
Could I just pause for a second? I just want to make sure, Renee, that we have a copy of this. We didn't get this electronically. And I will forward to the district managers and any agency that would want to have the information as well, so that we can have copies of this. Thank you.
Okay, great, thank you. So the Community and Customer Management team, this is our mission statement. This is what our organization, our mission statement is. We're focused on account management, economic development, energy efficiency, REV, which is geothermal projects and all new technology projects, community relations, and stakeholder engagement. We are very active in Brooklyn, as you guys may know. We do a lot of community activities. We work closely with the United Way. We work closely supporting communities. That is part of our mission as well. Our goal is to enhance our reputation to be a trusted energy advisor, and we do this by understanding the needs of our customers and the communities we serve. And one of our missions is to transform the customer experience and drive superior satisfaction results. Just some high-level numbers. Downstate New York, right? There's 1.8 million gas customers in the downstate region. 1.2 million of those are in the New York City region. So if you look at the company as a whole, we have 4,000 employees downstate, but Brooklyn, Queens, and Staten Island, that is the majority of our customers, which 1.2 million. And we have nearly 8,000 miles of distribution and transmission pipe. Just to give just a high-level overview of the transmission system for you guys that know, most of the gas that comes to Brooklyn comes from Texas. Every 100 miles, there's these compressor stations that boost the pressure up and feeds into Staten Island and into New York City. We're also interconnected with Con Ed. So that's how the gas actually gets here, and it goes through a process of breaking down to pressure before it goes to your home. And the other source would be from Canada, which comes into Long Island. So just to give you a high-level overview, so the gas comes from these two regions, Canada and Texas, comes into these big gate stations. It's broken down into lesser pressures through gate stations, and then into regulator stations, and then to your homes. So when you think of the concept, it starts at 1,000 pounds, and by the time there's 30 pounds in a car tire, by the time it gets to your house, it's at less than 2 pounds. So it's a pretty intricate network. And this is our investment from the rate case. We're investing $3 billion into our infrastructure downstate. And this includes 300 positions, 300 new jobs, and provides $3 billion of investment over the next 3 years. And this is the amount of miles of pipe that we're going to replace. And we're actually going to rebuild the whole infrastructure to repower not only Brooklyn, but the whole downstate region for the next 150 years. Again, new transmission pipelines. This serves the growing demand, increases gas safety, and storm hardening after Sandy. We also are upgrading our LNG facilities for Community Board. We have you from Greenpoint, Community Board 1, so you're familiar with the LNG facilities. We're also putting money into those facilities. For anybody, for an educational thing, an LNG facility, it's a tank where we store gas as a reserve, and on a really cold day in the winter when there's no more pipeline gas, we call on that LNG facility, and they actually put gas into the transmission system as a reserve backup. So when you drive over the Kosciuszko Bridge and you see those tanks, that's a critical site for backup to feed this gas system. Looking ahead, the big picture focus, we're focused, one of our main focuses at National Grid is safety and reliability. We're making investments to grow and modernize our infrastructure. We want to improve the customer experience and engage in the communities we serve. We are supporting clean energy solutions, including distributed energy solutions, and dedicated to environmental stewardship. One of the projects we're working on over in Newtown right now is working with a garbage recycle plant that makes natural gas. So we are committed to the environment as well. And this is just, I'm not going to go into every little thing, but this is a high-level plan that just applies for Brooklyn, because that's what we're here for today, right? So these are all the high-level projects that are coming up in Brooklyn. We got 31 miles of pipe for city-state construction, 15 miles of main installs, 13 miles of proactive main replacement. Proactive main replacement is for people that if you lived in Brooklyn a long time, a lot of the system is a cast iron and it's an aged system. So if we get a certain amount of leaks, we go in and replace that pipe so that we mitigate the leaks. That's what that means. And then the local law 30 mandated by the New York Fire Department, we've already completed over 8,000 services. And just for your education, again, the New York City Fire Department has a requirement. We have to go and cut these valves in. It's called the Local Law 30 program, and in the event, it gives them access to be safe and shut down a house or a housing development, whatever the case may be. And then the total main installation in Brooklyn with main replacement and new main projects is 59 miles, so you could see it's a big feat. The other two projects, and this is for all the community boards, this is critical. There's a metropolitan reliability project, which is going to start in Brownsville, Brooklyn. This is a transmission pipe that is going to, it's 6,300 feet of 30-inch steel pipe. So this is the biggest project in the downstate area. And it's going to run from Brownsville all the way up into the Greenpoint area and tie into our infrastructure. And what this does, I don't know if anybody's familiar with Flatbush and the Flatbush area. We have a new gate station that's down with Transco, and the transmission gas comes from Texas and it comes into Brooklyn. This pipeline will facilitate that feed to loop the whole system into the Brooklyn backbone, which is just a home run for Brooklyn, not only for gas, but it's also would be utilized for electric generation at a cheaper, more cleaner fuel. And then our other big project is for the people of downtown, the Brooklyn Navy Yard. We are putting in a new gate station. That gate station is going to bring 350 pounds of transmission pressure and reduce it to 15 pounds. This is a game changer for downtown Brooklyn. It's going to literally re-energize downtown Brooklyn. We start the project October or November of this year, and it'll be completed once we shovel to the ground by the next year. So if we start October 15th, by next October 15th, this will be on the property of the Navy Yard. You won't see it. It'll be a mini gate, which means it's underground, and it has meter runs, and it'll bring that transmission. What it does is it's going to, right now there's over 100 customers in Brooklyn waiting for this to go live, and I can tell you there's probably another 100 more. So this is going to be a game changer in the energy business for economic development and both residential, economical, industrial development for downtown Brooklyn. So we're excited about this project. And these are just some pictures. I just wanted to talk real quick about the permit application, and then I'm going to kick it over to Frank. There's two types of permits, and I just want to clear that up. One of them is a planned permit. So when we do a job in the field, we request a permit with the DOT. We have to go through a process. A lot of the times, I know, depending on the community board, there's different stipulations on those processes, whether it be a religious observance, or if you're working in front of a school, or it's a Jewish holiday, or whatever the case may be. That's the standard procedure when we apply for a permit. And then we go through the process, and we receive that permit, and then we go out and do the work. Just to be clear, an emergency permit, there's two types of permits. There's planned and emergency. Emergency could be a contractor working out in the field, and they hit a gas main. Most of Brooklyn is a 15-pound system. So again, 30 pounds in a tire, guy hits a main on 15 pounds and he's got a leak going. That's an emergency permit. That has to go through the E-system, which is an electronic system, and it has to be expedited so that we could do the work. Other issues of an emergency permit would be if a gas leak came in. We are required by the Public Service Commission. So if a gas leak comes in and it's a type 1 leak, it's got to be addressed immediately. Can't wait another week or 2 weeks till the permit comes in. We have to go out and address it right away. So that's the difference between an emergency permit and a planned permit. And I'm going to kick this over to Frank Gill. Frank Gill is in charge of our paving operation for downstate. He's going to go through the next 8 to 10 slides. And then if you have any questions, I'll be glad to come up and answer any of your questions, and I appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Thank you, Keith. Which one am I using now? This one? To the right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Frank Gill. I'm the lead supervisor for paving in National Grid. I've been with the company for 29 years. Most of you probably already know of the new DOT rule changes that actually came around sometime last year. I'm going to speak a couple of bullet points and mostly slides to show you the effect it's going to have on the community. Okay, on August 7, 2016, the new rules came into effect. In the past, I'm going to just skip some of these things. In the past, you had an opening in front of your home. We backfilled. We did a 6-inch cutback with a jackhammer around that cut. We came back the very next day, and we paved it. Even if the street had concrete based roadway, we were allowed to put asphalt in there. Those rules have changed. Now we have to go back with concrete. So by having to go back with concrete now, it's going to take much longer to pave a opening, okay? Not only do we have to do that 6-inch cutback all the way down of the strata of the road, we have to do a 12-inch cutback around the top of the cut. Just the wearing course. The wearing course is just the 2 inches of asphalt on top of the concrete. Then again, like I said, we have to come back, put asphalt, concrete, and then come back and do asphalt again, okay? This is what it looked like in the past. You have your 3x3 opening, right? 3 foot by 3 foot opening. You came, you did a 6-inch cutback, made it into a 4x4, paved it the very next day. Now, the 3x3, you have to do the 6-inch full depth saw cut all the way down, turns into a 4x4. Then you got to come back again, do another saw cut. That 4x4 now turns into a 6x6. So obviously, it's multiple visits to one site compared to one visit. Another new rule is this. If you have 2 cuts within 10 feet of each other, okay, so you have 2 3x3 cuts within 10 feet of each other, you have to break out that wearing course around the 2 cuts, even what's in between. So you're making one opening now. So those 2 openings are now combined into one. If the cuts are within 3 feet apart, you have to take everything out and make it into one big opening. Again, it was a one-day process, okay? The crew backfilled the cut. The very next day, the paver was there to pave it. Now, the crew backfills the cut. The next day, we have to put 4 inches of asphalt in there. You'll see the slides exactly how it works. We have to put 4 inches of asphalt in there, come back another visit, dig that 4 inches of asphalt up, do saw cutting, come back another time, put concrete. This is what the cut used to look like one day, very next day. This is the process now. Again, like I said earlier, We place temporary asphalt in the opening, okay? For this reasoning, we have to come and do saw cutting. You'll see the inside line of the cut is the 6-inch full-depth saw cut. That's what, the bottom left is the saw cutting material, equipment that's being used. Top right is the 12-inch saw cut now. Bottom right is the small saw cutting equipment that needs to be used. The next visit, all of that material that you just saw cut and that asphalt has to come back out. It could be the next day, it could be 2 days, 3 days, depending on parking, stipulations, things like that. All of that material has to come back out. Okay, that's your left slide. And then the right slide is we have to add the concrete base. Okay, so that's another visit. So that's visit number 3. The same visit, we're putting down a membrane for the concrete and asphalt to adhere to each other. The last visit would be to come and put the top layer of asphalt in now. Again, I'm repeating myself, but it used to be a one-day process, and all we had to use was asphalt. We didn't have to use concrete. The success rate of the asphalt was 98%, which isn't bad. We don't know what the new rate's going to be because we're just starting it, really. Additional equipment's going to be on location. It used to be a dump truck pouring the asphalt, and that was it. Now it's going to be a dump truck, a backhoe, a cement truck, utility trucks, saw cutting equipment. So it's from one truck down to probably 5 or 6 different types of trucks now. The new process is going to lead into an increase in customer and DOT complaints, no doubt about it. Again, we were there one day. Now we're going to be there multiple days. Customers don't understand that we have to come back and forth, back and forth. Administrative, permitting, inspection, and restoration costs are going to increase also for National Grid. And that's about it. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Are there any questions? Jeremy and Eddie? Mm-hmm.
So who is responsible for restoring street or pavement markings?
Our contractor, not New York Paving, yes.
And is the process the same for replacing sidewalks?
Yeah, that hasn't changed.
That hasn't changed?
No.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, we had some problems with our sidewalk when they were repaved. The quality of it was not up to par. It started to crack. It started to, you could tell that it wasn't quality cement. Is there any way of getting them to come back? Because
Absolutely.
You understand, Helen is the one that's dealing with the pipes.
Hallen works for National Grid, so yeah, absolutely. We'll get you my number. You give me a call, and we'll take care of it. Or you call Renee. Yeah, call Renee, and Renee will get in touch with me.
The only complaints we had was debris left behind by contractors.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
The only complaints that we've had is that debris has been left by contractors that wasn't removed a couple times this summer, but I was able to reach you guys and let you know about it, just so you know. That's the only complaints I've had with contractors that you're using, is they don't clean up after them. So,
Sure.
So I'm going to answer that one. So we recently just put together a sensitivity training for all of our contractors, just so you guys know, when you see a contractor in the field, 80% of the contractors that work in New York City are from Hallen. They still represent National Grid, and to your point, and it was a great question, because what happens is, we've had a couple of incidents where customers have complained whether somebody maybe gave them an attitude or maybe left the debris in front of their house, and that's not acceptable. So just so you know, we got together with our engineering team. We spent 3 weeks working on a PEX to look at it from an engineering thing, to get at the heart of the problem and start to fix the issues. That's number one. Number two, every contractor is going through sensitivity training. One of my managers, Juan Santiago, he came from the field, so he speaks the language. He put together an interactive PowerPoint with the sensitivity to all communities, and also in there has a video on how people should be treated with respect and dignity, and it also has examples of what a bad site looks like and what a good site looks like. So 600 people in Howland are going through that training, and that's not all. We're also going to put it in our learning link system, and every single National Grid, whether he or she, whatever department that they're in, it's going to be mandatory. They have to go and take this training. So those are some of the initiatives, and I feel your pain, because if it was my house, I wouldn't want it left out, and that's the same thing. When we said to some of the contractors, I said, how would you like it if you had a 5-year-old daughter who was riding a bike and fell in a hole? It's not acceptable. So if you have an issue, you call us, and I guarantee you, we'll address it
I
immediately.
appreciate that, thank you.
Josephine.
Hi. So in Community Board 10, which is Bay Ridge, Diker Heights, and Fort Hamilton, National Grid, I feel, has moved into the district. We have so much work going on. I think Renee, I call upon her at least once or twice a week, and I appreciate this PowerPoint was very helpful in really understanding the new process. I have two questions. One is within the new process, I mean, we've had a lot of complaints this summer. We had a lot of local law 30 work, job sites that we felt were unkempt, open sites that were not filled in, we felt in a timely manner. So my first question is, how long does it take for the entire process now? I mean, is there a limit to the contractor from when the work is completed to the final restoration? Is it 1 week? Is it 2 weeks? Do you give a time limit for that work to be done? And engineering-wise, is there a minimum time limit for that work?
I'll try to answer the first part of this. I might need some help from my partner here, but just to answer your first question, the workload has increased by 5 times. 5 times. I'm in the company almost 30 years. 5 times our workload has increased. So, and to your point, Renee and we drove last week from Bed-Stuy to downtown, and there was a National Grid crew on every block, and I'm just shaking my head going like there's a lot of work going on. So that's number one. As far as the process is set for no longer than 4 days. However, sometimes there's parked cars, and I don't want to answer for you.
Well, it's not really 4 days, it's 4 visits. So each visit might take a couple of days to get to. Again, parked cars, plates, things like that. With the new process, we're hoping within 15 to 30 days, everything will be paved. Again, like I said before, it was much sooner because it was a 1-day process. We were allowed to leave the hole open, backfill, pour asphalt the next day. It'd take longer, no doubt about it. And again, hopefully 15 to 30 days.
Wow.
Yeah, it's...
How,
just so you know, our paving contractor has just invested $11 million in equipment, hired 83 people recently, just so we could hit these locations sooner. Come October, we have another 6 mixers, concrete mixers coming in, 6 more crews coming out. So that's going to help also. Okay. So the longer the more people we get, obviously, the shorter it's going to take.
right.
This
I mean-
initiative is the #1 initiative for downstate right now.
Yeah.
This goes all the way up to, to the president of the company. This is, like Frank said, everybody's laser focused on getting the paving backlog completed and improving.
Okay, I mean, those are big issues when they remain unopened for some time. And I mean, failed utility cuts have been a problem in the past for us too. But making sure that, the work is done timely, and parking, as you know, is always a concern, I'm sure, a difficulty on your end to make sure that those areas remain. But I think that if it's done in an orderly and a timely fashion, that it's more likely not to be unkempt, more likely to be. And it really depends on the contractor. We've had some good dealings with, I think we have New York Paving, and sometimes we've had to call Renee and say, these guys have to clean up, and they've taken up 6 parking spaces of debris when they really could be consolidated into 2. So working together and getting that message out, I do appreciate it. The second question I had was regarding the difference between emergency work and planned work. And a few months ago, we had a job, we had a big replacement job that was planned, that was done on the Saturday before Easter Sunday. And I think I was very impressed. I reached out to Renee. The Borough President's office had reached out because they had received complaints. And it was resolved, but that was a planned job that there was a moratorium on that received an E-permit. So when does a planned job, and how often does planned work become emergency work?
So emergency work in my mind is anything that's a gas leak. Anything that's a leak, a type 1 leak, has to be addressed. And we do have transmission main throughout Staten Island, Brooklyn, and Queens. That's a 350-pound gas line. If you have a leak, or even any kind of instance of a leak, got to be addressed immediately. You can't wait. We're mandated by the PSC to address all leaks that are type 1 immediately. And anything, right? And the other thing is the contractor work. You got to realize, the work that's increased 5 times, with that, there's crews, like to your point, Bay Ridge, there's crews everywhere in Bay Ridge.
I know.
But that work that they're doing is all planned under, we have an SOP, which is a standard operating procedure, which has to go through engineering and be reviewed. It goes through a whole process, goes into a control room to, everything is based on safety. All the steps are followed. It's very, very efficient. It's an efficient process. But I guess, so what you're saying is on that Saturday, if somebody was out there, was it really an emergency or was it planned?
Right.
And
I know it was on the planned list, but then it became an emergency job.
Yeah, that's a
yeah.
tricky one.
Right.
I'd have to know more about. If you
Okay.
gave me the location, I could look into it and email you back. I'd have to find.
Okay.
I don't want to answer
No, I mean, it's
incorrectly.
all done now, and I guess it was feasible, it's possible that planned work becomes emergency I would imagine that if it needs upgrades, that there may have been a situation that it required an emergency because it could have leaked and it could have risen to that level. It was just the timing was pretty horrible.
Yeah, and I think sometimes that happens too. A lot of times, especially in Brooklyn, when you open up a hole, there's other stuff in there that you didn't know was there. That happens a lot, okay? Because I used to work in operations. You open up a hole and maybe there's cable, there's water, maybe there's a water main or an encroachment or some other issue under the main, and then it becomes an emergency.
Right. And then my final question, if I can, Madam Borough President, Deputy Borough
course.
President. One more question is, we have this complaint all the time, and because you mentioned that you've done some training with your workers, I want to share with you another common complaint, not only with National Grid, but other utilities and even some of the agencies, is when you pull permits for storage of materials and you take additional parking spaces, we ask that they be consolidated to the minimum that you need to meet your needs, and that private contractor vehicles don't utilize that for their private parking. It really creates a lot of tension in the community when people are asked to move their vehicles and contractor vehicles or personal vehicles are placed with cones on top and metered parking or other areas. It does happen, and we've had that complaint, and sometimes residents fight with the contractors over it, and we've worked on it, and actually it's improved much, but I just want to mention it because it's happened, and it's been a concern in our district.
Can we note that? Can we? So Renee's taking notes now. We do, just so everybody in here is aware as well, what we do every month now, we have a meeting in Metrotech down the block, and we bring the contractors in, and we bring in, at my level too, the directors, VPs, and every month we hold them, we have like a 3-hour meeting, and we're not going to stop until it gets better. Listen, it's an uphill battle because of the amount of work, but I give you my commitment that everything I can do to make things better, we
Could
will
I just
continue.
understand, because I appreciate the commitment, I just need to understand the protocol. And so, are you saying that the crew is discouraged to take personal vehicles, right? So that they're not increasing tensions in the community where space is limited for parking vehicles? Or are you trying to, is there an incentive program within the company that promotes what is, don't drive your personal vehicle, let's carpool? Like, I'm trying to understand exactly how would this particular issue be mitigated, and is that part of the sensitivity training so that when crews are out in their deployment, this is one of the messages? And what
Yes.
is that message?
So I think, like Renee's taking notes, so when we meet next week, is it? Next week, we meet in Metrotech, and I deal with the senior vice president there, Gene Hickey, and that's something I can address and say, hey, look, if you guys roll out of this yard,
Right.
can 5 or 6 of you jump in a truck instead
Correct.
of on a Saturday, 5 or 6 people coming to the
Correct.
location? I will definitely address
And
it.
so I'm trying to understand exactly what the message is, because I understand perhaps some crew members perhaps could drive into, rather than going to the actual work site to then be deployed, that then perhaps they're coming from their own home routes that may end up where this work site, where the community is, where they're going to be assigned, is going to be closer. And is the convenience for the worker overriding community relations? And so that's the piece that I'm trying to understand. So I appreciate that you're going to go back and really dig deeper on what should be the exact clear message, because we may want to do something and try to deal with this, but when we talk about parking, there's no magic answer, and saying we're committed to resolving that is a pipe dream. And so I don't want to make it seem like we're going to resolve the issue, but to understand that if there could be a carpooling approach, or that the protocol is to emphasize the message every month, or a combination of many different things, I want to be crystal clear on that message.
I appreciate that. And
Yep.
listen, if you look, this is the reason why we came here today.
I
You know,
appreciate that.
We're here today, and I'll field any questions that anybody has here. We're here to make things better. I'm trying to build an alliance and try to make things
Sure.
better, because, you know, if it's my house, I wouldn't be happy either, you know,
Right.
on a Saturday
And you see
if I
the
had nowhere to
cones.
park.
The orange cones are very apparent, so it's not like you don't have to drive around Brooklyn to see what's a National Grid employee. And that raises the flag even further. So it's not a good profile on behalf of the company to have that image in the community.
Yeah. Well, like I said, Renee, now Eileen's here as well. Renee and Eileen have done a great
Sure.
job really putting pressure and working with the operating teams, because you got to realize the operating teams, the workload, again, it's gone up 5 times.
And-
So
and-
picture if
and
your workload goes up 5 times, and you're trying to do the right thing.
Right.
And so, but that will be noted, and we will address it, and I'll take it to the executive level with Hallen.
I appreciate that, and I know that there's a question from Sean, but I just need to understand the 5 times increase within the company. What is causing that? Is it development? Is it old infrastructure? Is it a combination? Because it almost seems like this is not a misnomer, an anomaly, right? Just, you know, throughout the history of National Grid, they've never seen this type of increase in workload.
Yep.
So what is causing it?
I'll speak for Brooklyn, you know, because we're in
That's all we
Brooklyn.
wanna know.
Yeah, I cover
Yep.
I cover everywhere from Staten Island to
Yep.
Montauk, but I'll speak about Brooklyn today. Brooklyn is the transmission system and the 15-pound system. It's a cast. The majority of it is cast iron. It's over
That
100
dates
years old.
back.
It dates back 100 years. So our number one goal is safety and reliability. So if you're an engineer and you're looking at this system and saying it's 100 years old, guess what? It's got to be replaced from a safety and reliability standpoint. So our crews are committed to going, and this MRI project is going to literally change the whole operation of Brooklyn for the next 150 years.
And so this particular new system,
Yeah.
replacing the old, is expected to last 150 years,
Yes.
more or less?
Probably more than that.
Right.
But to answer your question, a lot of it is an aging infrastructure that needs to be replaced. And the other piece of this is expansion. I mean, just go down to the
Expansion as in more development?
development. Just go down to the Brooklyn Navy Yard. It looks like the South Street Seaport. Let's face it. I mean,
Right.
Brooklyn is booming, and
Well,
to
I
meet
would
that
not
supply.
compare South Street Seaport to Brooklyn Navy Yard, because it's an industrial park, not a recreational, museum. So as far as the Brooklyn Navy Yard is concerned, the infrastructure there of industrial use,
Right.
right? Where now we're going from industrial use to also commercial use, right? So the density and volume.
And the office buildings. I mean,
Correct.
just if you look
The
at the
commercial.
downtown footprint, the commercial, all you see is buildings going up and buildings
They're
going
all
up.
residential.
Right, it's residential. But to meet that demand, right now, I told you, my old role, I was an operations guy. I ran the control center for New York State. And I sat in the control room at 4 o'clock in the morning on the coldest day, and you sit there going, you're going to lose customers. So this infrastructure, it hardens the system, not only from a system reliability on those cold days or hot days when we're making electric, but it also builds the infrastructure for the future. And it meets the demand. We can't keep
Sure.
up with the demand at this point.
So Keith, I just want to understand, how often do you foresee, right, as far as National Grid is concerned, paying attention to what's happening at the city planning level? So the Department of City Planning is where you start
Yep.
the foreseeable future of development, right? So East New York today is not what it was perhaps 3 years ago. And you're going to start seeing what is the density because of the rezoning that passed, right? And
Right.
so what is National Grid doing to advance itself in understanding that this is going to be a hot zone
Right.
because there's a zoning that passed. And so that's how you're able to plan ahead,
Yeah.
so that you're not being caught where you're trying to catch up on where did all this development come from.
Just to be clear, we have plenty of supply to operate at an average temperature of 15 degrees and below. So we don't have any system issues. We do have the capability to meet everybody's demand.
It's
That
not
being
about
said,
demand.
no, but for the future, to answer your question, to the future, those issues, we have a team of engineers, and let's say East New York starting to boom in the building, all of those, they send in a JCR request, and a load study is done. So to answer your question, if I'm in East New York and I get 30 of these things,
Keith, could you just bear with me? The load report, is it before the development starts? Are
Yes.
you coordinating with the Department of
Yes.
City Planning? That's what I
Yes.
want to understand.
yes.
Okay.
So if you're putting a building in East New York, and you call up our engineering team and say, I'm building a 10,000 person
But that sounds
office building.
like it's afterwards,
No,
not
no,
the
it's
Department of
before.
Buildings.
It's before.
Okay.
It has to be reviewed by us to see if we have the adequate load to support your building. So it is done proactively. It's not done after the fact.
Okay. Sean?
I have a couple questions about quality. One is quality of material and the other process. Who sets the standards on the quality of materials, like, for instance, the backfill? Because we don't want today's National Grid projects to be tomorrow's trench restoration requests.
The Department of Transportation does. They tell us how we have to backfill that cut.
Okay.
If the street was paved within the last 5 years, it's what they consider a protected street backfill. They actually have to be there to witness the backfill before we do any type of paving. Again, that takes time to set up with them.
Okay.
On a regular street that's not protected, we could backfill that very same day with the same material as long as it's not wet. And we have a compaction testing that we do to make sure that we have a 95% compaction that passes.
And as far as the 98% success rate of the previous asphalt, what's the time frame by which you'll measure the success rate of the current process?
It's going to be a while. I would say a year or two before we could really get a grip on it.
And then also on sidewalks, are you using the same material on all sidewalks, or does it depend on, I know we have in our historic districts requests for the composite sidewalks, so does that get taken into consideration, materials depending on where you are?
Yeah, we restore what the Department of Transportation tells us to, restoring kind. So whatever's there, we go back with.
Okay. And then in terms of the process, and I'm going to interrupt myself actually to thank Renee McClure, because she's so great at getting back to us, responding so quickly, and when she doesn't know, she finds out so quickly, and we're a pretty stipulation-heavy district, and she's been proactive about getting our locations and timeframes for our STIPs, so thank you, Renee. In terms of the process, you are almost ubiquitous, but you're not the only ones out there, and so this isn't really even for National Grid specifically, but because you're in so many places, and we do have so many other jobs with Con Edison and DEP, et cetera, I just feel like the onus is really on DOT, we're in CEFCO, the onus is really on DOT to coordinate these street opening permits, and sometimes I wonder if we're opening streets in such in close proximity, we have so many jobs in close proximity, whether it's best to just open up that street in so many places at once and get it all done, or if we should be taking turns better. But this is just to put it out there for future that still ongoing concerns about the permitting process. And where you are, you do get street opening permits in a lot of locations that are pretty close to each other. And so do you look at traffic or other?
Yeah, we've been actually working together with the Department of Transportation and the other utilities to do what they call trench sharing. So everybody works in the same opening if possible. Cuts down on cost, obviously, and the disruption.
It's not that apparent.
Is that the standard, or is that the exception?
It's not, it's the exception, right, as of now.
That's why it's not.
Yes.
And so that would be a master plan coordination. How often does that happen, and can that turn into a standard?
I can't speak on that because it's really not my department. I don't know how often they do it, but I've been
And
seeing
when you
it,
say
I've
it's
been
not
seeing
your
it more and
department,
more.
if it's not your department, whose department is it?
Design, construction, what is it?
DDC?
No.
You're talking about in National
National Grid.
There is a department
Yeah.
that dedicates to that.
City-state construction usually does it, yes.
And as far as city-state construction, do they reach out to the utility companies, to the other stakeholders?
Yeah, I believe, I'm not too sure, I don't want to answer and not, we have a gentleman named Neville Jacobs. He attends all these meetings, and
So the
Right.
question really is, how can we do even better?
Correct, correct.
Can we make a note of that?
Because the master planning around what was described between Sean and yourself is ideal, right? And how do we get to that ideal coordination? Because this is a heavy load, right? You went from one truck to more apparatus, right?
Absolutely.
The opportunity to just understand that, and you said protected street, but I've seen protected streets according to the definition of what is protected, because it's been repaved, right, touched within the year. So that's a failed system, right? So I'm trying to understand who calls the shot as far as having that coordination so that it brings everyone together.
well, especially on protected streets, obviously, we try not to open them up. The reasons being we have to open them up is because of gas leaks. I've been doing the DOT resurfacing for the last 15 years, maybe 17 years. So I'm matter of fact, I should be in the meeting across the street right now. So I'm very familiar with the process. A lot of the reasons why we have to open a brand-new street within 5 years, gas leaks. We do a mobile survey of all of our gas lines while they're in middle of the street, and we walk each bare steel service to make sure they're not leaking
Right.
prior to them paving. So we do diligence, no doubt about it. A lot of the reasons we open is because of leaks and a lot of new business. So if the customer asks us for gas, we have to supply it, unfortunately. Fortunately, yeah. Unfortunately, we have to open that new street.
Yes, Marie?
Question regarding the master planning. Do you have, like, what you see happening within 5 years, 10 years, 20 years?
Yes.
In the district, like for each of the community boards? That would be helpful for us to have.
On the transmission, so just to answer the question, on the transmission system, yes, the transmission system is a 350-pound system, which is the whole infrastructure for the whole city. That we do have, I have a 5-year plan, 7-year plan, 10-year plan.
You kind of know where you'll be at a certain point in time when we're working on other projects, like with the Kosciuszko Bridge reconstruction, you have to
Right.
relocate all the pipes over there. And then we have the line going into the plant from Sewage Street plant, where you're getting
Right.
methane.
The methane gas, yep.
So there's a lot of things that go on, and especially projects at DOT, that we need to know where, there were some projects that we mentioned we were going into, like on the street, along the street, we knew months ahead of time that this was coming down the pipe, we didn't know when it was going to start. So it'd be very helpful for us, and for the other community boards, that we have some kind of a, even like DC, we put all their plant projects onto a map. We can use it as an overlay. And we know there's waterfront development going in here. We know there's going to be a major park reconstruction over here. You need, that all impacts the streets.
Right, so before the ones that I mentioned, the two biggest ones that are going on is the Brownsville to Greenpoint. It's going to end in Greenpoint, so that'll be 5 years from now. And that'll tie into the backbone of the whole system. I got you. You'd want to see where it starts with the, so we could probably provide that. Or a general, it's not, that's a 5-year project.
So we started from Brownsville and we were going to Greenpoint. And even when we laid out the plans and had a meeting with Community Board 16, because that's who we worked with, Viola and her team, and also Bill from the bids, there was still still changes at the last minute. So if we give something 5 years out, if there's a change, then we have, changes happen, you know, in the process. So if something is rerouted, we're just concerned that we give it that, we can talk to you about it being 5 years out, but if we give the exact layout and that layout changes, which often happens because of whatever reason, then that becomes, that material
And
becomes.
plans do change.
Correct.
But where are you planning to go is something that we need to know. Where are those streets?
We can
that-
provide that.
Right, and I'm saying to you that even when we did the layout with Viola, we changed the streets. So we can give you a high-level outline of
Right.
where we're going, but if this
So we
be
have
understood,
something
that
that
Yep.
may not be relevant by the time we get to your area. And that's fair.
Yeah, we can provide that with you. You know, a high-level snapshot of what neighborhoods it starts, where it ends, and
Which is a
time.
projection.
Yes.
What the streets though? We
Yep.
know if you're going up Vanderbilt
Sure.
Avenue, or you're going up through Queens and then coming into Brooklyn. You know,
We can provide you with that.
waterfront development and a lot of different issues going on in the industrial area as you approach the plant.
We can provide you a high-level snapshot of the transmission project and the timeline. Yes, sir.
Barry's going to be next, and I just want to make sure, any follow-up questions, especially because of the employment opportunities? I didn't hear anything as far as where do we get information regarding those job openings related to this plan? If you could have that available for us as part of this presentation as well?
Sure. We do have work fairs for employment. We also actively are recruiting veterans. If you look on our website, on nationalgrid.com, where you can see the jobs that are posted both internally and externally. And also, if you go on monster.com, there are, depending on your background, you can see the jobs that are posted out there. We are committed to diversity, and we're also committed to hiring veterans at a pretty quick rate. We have over 700 veterans now in the company, and over 125 of them right here in New York. So that's a big initiative right now, you know,
So any
keep that up.
follow-up questions, if we can have them forwarded to us so that we can interface with Con Edis, National Grid to be able to have answers to those questions, because we're running really behind. So it's going to be a really long day. But we'll take a break for some more coffee. Please, Barry.
Yes, sir.
Good morning, Barry Spitzer, Community Board 12, Borough Park, Midwood, Kensington. Obviously, Borough Park is my main concern because of the traffic and parking issues we have there. So I just have a question. Is it possible to get, because they're in my district as well, they live there, is it possible to get a concise schedule, meaning we get notifications, we'll be here for the next 60 days. And I have no idea when they come, when they go, what, you know, we'll be here. What I'm asking is, 48th Street, we'll be here on that day, and we'll be there for 5 days. On 16th Avenue, we'll be there that day. You know, you get a list of 10, 15 locations, and 60 days, and I don't know what's coming, what's going, when, and what's happening, and the residents of my district are irate as it is when stuff like this happens. So can we get like better scheduling? Like we know where you're gonna be and for how long?
You know, I would be lying if I could say that, you know, yes, you're exactly going to get the schedule, but unfortunately, with resource planning, sometimes people get rerouted or jobs do change. Renee, go ahead.
I see Renee is getting up, and I just want to say that my colleagues gave her credit. I don't think she gets enough credit. She should get hazard pay.
I feel really bad because, you know, her performance review's not up for like another 8 months, and she said if it was this month, she would have got like the best raise in the whole department.
We are very relaxed. Our schedule when no, but our customer notifications right now come out, we'll say we'll get in a couple of weeks, and we'll give the locations.
Right.
But the thing is that, and to resource planning, they meet every week. Every Thursday, they sit down and determine, they get the jobs out, when they're gonna start the work. Even though I send those notifications to you, that job may get moved.
Right.
And so if I send it to you and we give you a date and it moves and you prepare for that date, then it becomes an issue for us. So that's why when I sent you and the other community boards asking for the boundaries of your observances, so we won't come in that area, any jobs that are going to start to that we're gonna stop them. So to answer your question, we can give you as close as proximity as possible, but when we start giving actual dates and you move on that date, and we move the date, then that sometimes become more of an issue for us than giving a more vaguer date.
I understand that, but, you know, sometimes, you know, National Grid would just show up, and then I start getting calls. Did you know about this? I'm like, well, I knew that sometime in the near future there's going to be work, but I didn't know they're coming today or yesterday or the day before, or like if you guys show up on a Friday afternoon, and that's when you're the receiving end of my.
We have you on speed dial. So I would say that what we can do is bring back to the team to talk about, you know, when you schedule the work, you know, is there a better approximate time that you anticipate?
Even
that going
ballpark,
on?
right.
I do go to the resource planning meetings, not as often as I can, but I do go. And also I'm on calls to hear when work is moving, you know, throughout the system. So what I can say is we can bring that back for a conversation as an action item to see if there's a way that we can kind of hone into identifying closer time frames and when we're actually coming out to the community. Can't make a guarantee because sometimes there's work that does not hit my radar. If there's an in-and-out project, 1 or 2 a day, there's a service that's coming in and out, I may not see that. I get the larger projects over a period of time. So there's, because we have our maintain crews out there doing work, we have so many crews out there doing different things, and I don't see every job that comes through the company, but I only get really the larger projects.
Right, and just to follow up on that, so I'm working with Renee already on the high holidays are approaching and the sensitive times. Renee does a magnificent job, but, you know, Passover, this year, the Passover, we had the schedule, we had the locations where work should not, and Renee put it through, but Helen just disregarded it. And I called Renee and I said, they're working on the eve of Passover, the busiest day in my district, literally, okay? And Renee couldn't believe it. What do you mean they're working there? And they literally had shut off one of the busiest streets in my district. And I mean, and I told Renee, they're here, and she couldn't believe it. And she came down. Actually, you were in a meeting, she came down to the district to check it out. So, yes, National Grid works with us very well in, you know, before the holidays or sensitive times in the neighborhood, but how does it filter down to the contractor, to Howland or to New York Paving? Because it doesn't look like they're listening or they're, you know, working together with you guys.
So Keith had mentioned earlier that we are starting to have monthly meetings with Howland, and this is the information we have to bring back because we're already talking to them about being sensitive to customer needs. We're also talking about debris. We're going to talk to them, you know, that if you're given an assignment not to work in that area, you need to follow it. So these are things that we can bring back.
You also just sent the notification out internally about the Jewish holidays.
Yes, I did.
So she it's not that Renee's not doing a job.
That-
I
that's
saw
what
the
it
email.
said.
She
She's
sent it
doing
out
her
to she sent it out to every manager
Right.
and every engineer and said, these are the days of observance, you will not be in these areas. She's already done that. Now, if that happened, and now if somebody
That
still comes
happened
out
to
there,
Passover. She
but if
made
it
sure
happens-
that they know, but they didn't follow through.
we'll take that back to the executive team in Howland.
If we're giving you these dates, do not go in there. If you need to go in there, then we need to know so I can call and have a conversation with you as to tell you why we need to go in there. There could be something that's an encroachment, there could be a safety issue, and we need to get in. We've done that as well. So that'll be a conversation we can bring back to Howland because we do meet with them on a monthly basis.
But planned work should not happen out of respect for those holidays. And if it does happen, we need to know about it, like immediately.
And they should get permits as well, because I personally called them working without a permit a few times.
That's another whole issue.
They do not pull permits, they come in, they do work without permits.
Everybody's shaking their head, so that's a problem.
We taking notes of that?
Okay, so I hope that was a really important note. I won't say high note. And if we can just have, I don't know if the team is able to come back next month to give us a report on what progress you're making with conversations, so that we have an update next month. That would
Absolutely.
be fantastic.
We can meet once a month if you want. You have my
Well,
contact
Renee
information.
comes to our meetings, right? But this specific matter, as far as permits are concerned, seems to be at the highest of priorities, because multiple people were nodding their heads. Yeah, that's my situation as well.
Like I said, we're here to build an alliance,
Yeah.
so whatever needs to happen.
I appreciate
If we have
that
to come
very
here every
much.
month, every week, whatever has to happen, you know.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I see that you're wrapping up, so I just wanted to throw in something that I haven't heard about. I'm Raul Rubio, I'm one of the executive members of Community Board 4. With a jump from 2 days to 14 multi-unit like repairs and 5 times as much work, how does that cost get absorbed? We're talking about 60 miles of pipe that you're gonna have to lay down. Yeah, how's that gonna affect energy costs in the next couple of years? You have progression, how that's gonna be absorbed?
Well, I thought I was going to get out of here without a hard question. Thank you. So there's two types of ways to recover costs. One of them is operations and maintenance, O&M, which is construction. That is not recoverable. That means if something at a gate station has to be replaced or a regulator station has to be replaced, we eat that. To answer your question, if it's a capital investment like this pipeline, that money is recovered through the rate case. So it is recoverable. That's for new infrastructure.
Right, so that means a passed-on cost to the customer,
Correct. Does that answer your
to be
question?
clear.
We just completed a rate case with the Public Service Commission, and if you go online, sir, and you type in the New York rate case, you'll be able to see all the data, because it was approved by the Public Service Commission for a period of 3 years. So you'd probably be able to get some detailed information. I don't want to give you the wrong info, but it's out online.
I appreciate that, and thank you very much, Keith, Frank, and Renee, and I'm sorry,
Terry.
Terry, thank you. Terry, for your presentation, and we look forward to continued conversations. And just, it's important for us to have you here, so feel free to just continue to forward information. More importantly, be present, as has been the case, but even more so considering the volume and procedurally how much more complicated this has become. So we appreciate your presentation here today, and we're going to move on to the next presentation, which is Con Edison. So we have utility love today. I don't know if you want to stay for Con Edison's. They stayed for yours. Equal love here. We have new smart meter and advanced metering infrastructure program. Thomas McGee is here, general manager. So we are going to ask him to come up and present his team, so that way you could.
Thank you for your time today.
Oh, no, to you. I appreciate it. Come over here, so that way, because the camera at least will capture.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
My name is Tom McGee. I'm the general manager for Con Edison, the AMI project, AMI implementation team. I'm going to present today with Patty Kim. So Patty's got an important role in her project. She's a change management lead for the Con Edison AMI project. And the AMI project is a transformative project for Con Edison and our customers.
Is there a copy of your presentation for everyone?
We'll email it
Okay.
after the presentation. We can email it.
Thank
Okay.
you.
So it's a transformative project for Con Edison and our customers. It's the largest single capital project that Con Edison has ever deployed, $1.285 billion. We've actually kicked off the deployment of smart meters in Staten Island in July, and we're installing about 800 meters a day in Staten Island right now. We plan to start Westchester on October 2nd. We also have an initiative to meter the MTA facilities starting October 2nd, a big initiative as well. And Brooklyn is we're planning to start the meter installation in Brooklyn on April 1st. All right, so I'll give an overview of the project, an overview of how smart meters, what the program looks like, and I'll turn it over to Patty at the end of the presentation to talk about how customers are going to be notified and some more of the change management aspects of the project. So just smart meters, they're not new. They're fairly new. Across the utility industry and across America, we have about 70 million smart meters have been deployed. So Florida's got smart meters, California, Texas, ComEd out in Chicago, they're doing a big deployment right now. And there's a lot of benefits that we see from smart meters, right? Number one, we're going to get operational improvement. So a lot of folks don't realize when you lose your power, we don't know until you call us, right? With the smart meters, we'll know. We have an AMI operations center that's being deployed, and we'll know immediately after you lose power. The meters will enable us to integrate distributed resources into the grid more efficiently and easier. We have a lot of operational savings, so there's not going to be a need for folks to actually walk around and actually manually read meters at the end of the program, right? And it's going to enable new customer choices and benefits. So with the smart meters, eventually down the road, there'll be new pricing programs, new ways that customers can enter the various markets. So if you look at the installations, again, there was a big push for smart metering right around 2010 to 2014. That's with the DOE, the Smart Grid Stimulus projects. Again, Con Edison didn't get approval back at that point in time, but this project was approved in the rate case. So what does the project consist of? So it consists of smart meters, right? So in Brooklyn, we're just installing the electric meters, right? We don't have gas in Brooklyn or Staten Island service territory. In Westchester and Manhattan and Queens, we're deploying both electric and gas smart meters. So we have the meters that get replaced, and across our service territory, it's about 4.8 million meters that are going to be replaced. At our peak, we'll be replacing about 5,000 meters a day, right? So it's a big effort. We also have a communication network that gets deployed, right? So these communication devices get installed on utility poles or streetlights. In Brooklyn, we have about 1,100 of those devices that need to get deployed, right? And really a lot of work on the back office IT system. So we spent a lot of time integrating the AMI meter data with various back office systems. It integrates with our billing systems, outage management systems, and various systems to give us access to the data. So what are the benefits for smart meters, right? Number one, I talked a little bit about with the smart meter, you're no longer going to have someone come and manually read your meter. So there'll be no one knocking on your door at 7:30 or 8 o'clock in the morning to read your meter. It enables facilitates the integration with solar, right? So all these meters have bi-directional capability. Again, in Staten Island, we have 4,000 solar customers, right? We're putting these meters in, and if they're injecting power into the grid, that meter is all set up to monitor that. Control costs. So with the smart meter and with the program, you'll be able to actually look on your tablet and look at your consumption when the meter comes this year or next year. You'll be able to look at your previous day's usage on your tablet. And we're doing something unique, something that's never been deployed across the utility industry, is that starting in the middle of 2018, we're going to enable near real-time data. So with the AMI meter and access to the Con Edison portal, you'll be able to actually look online and see what consumption you had for the previous 30 minutes, right? So it's very unique, and a lot of folks are really excited about the program. So when you go out of power, so there is a power outage, the fact that we're going to get immediate notification is going to mean that you'll have a faster restoration if there is an outage, right? And the other thing is the program is going to enable things like high bill alerts, right? So with this platform that's being rolled out with smart meters, and if you have a budget of $150 a month for electric, and you're 1 week into the month and you've already consumed $50 worth of electric, there'll be ways that you can actually get alerts to say, listen, I'm using too much energy. Let me see what's going on at home. All right, and it's also greener choices, right? So with the smart meters itself, so one of the big benefits that we have right now, we'll be able to look across the grid and know what the voltage is at each endpoint of the electric meter. And with that itself, the operators at Con Ed will actually be able to lower the voltage on the grid to a lower value, a safe value, something that's going to ensure you have the proper voltage level. But that we're forecasting is going to save about $40 million worth of fuel a year, right, once we have these meters rolled out. So one of the smart meters arrive, and that's what the meter looks like. It looks, we have a lot of similar meters deployed on our system. What makes this unique is it's got a what they call a network interface card, so that meter has a card in it that can communicate with these wireless access devices that are on the utility poles, right? The network installation started in June. We've already installed about 460 devices on utility poles.
In Brooklyn?
In Brooklyn, yep, 465 devices. The meter installation for new business work, right? So when we talk about the expanding economy, right, in Brooklyn and Queens, we've already installed about 3,500 meters with new business in Brooklyn itself, right? The mass rollout, right, so where we actually have a program where we're bringing in meter installers to go, and appointments will be scheduled, and Patty will talk to that, but we'll go from area to area, roll out meters. That's starting in April, right? So it's not too far down the road, right? So meter installations in Brooklyn right now is scheduled to continue all the way out to December of 2021. So Brooklyn is we've got more electric meters in Brooklyn than any other area of our service territory. We'll have, by October of next year, we'll be finishing up Staten Island. We'll have Westchester in place, right, with the installations that are starting in October. Brooklyn, and then we'll be in Manhattan next year, too. So what type of data do the smart meters collect, right? We look at how much energy consumers are using every 15 minutes. So with the online portal, when customers actually log in, you'll be able to look and see every 15 minutes how much power you consumed. Right? We'll have voltage data, outage data, and we have different alarms for the meters themselves. So we'll have alarms if people are tampering with alarms and stuff. We'll get alarms back in our headquarters, right? So personal information such as customer names and addresses and usage information on appliances, that data is not going to be collected. The meters are very accurate, so it's going to enable us to bill customer. And the existing meters are very accurate too, but these are accurate meters. They're all solid-state devices. We're going to enable customers to have access to online to their energy data. Right, we'll be able to troubleshoot equipment problems more efficiently. Right, so a lot of times we get calls from our customers that say, "Listen, we're having a problem with the electric power because our lights are flickering." With the smart meter, we'll be able to actually look and actually see the voltage go into that customer, and we could tell the customer, listen, it doesn't look like it's a Con Ed problem. You need to get an electrician because the problem is internal to the building. Energy supply planning will be improved. The fact that we have visibility over the voltage at every meter now, we'll be able to more efficiently design the system and operate the system. Right, and again, we have this portal that's been upgraded, so there's a lot of programs, energy efficiency programs, that will be able to, really show the customers what their usage is, and if they join these programs, this is how much more they could save. Right, and we have, with the meters themselves, we get diagnostic alarms that would tell us if there's a problem. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Patty. So Patty is our change management lead.
Good morning, everyone. So as Tom had mentioned, this is the biggest single capital project that Con Ed has ever delved into, and I think what it really makes it special is that we have an opportunity to go and touch every one of our customers. We will be replacing about 5 million gas and electric meters. So with that said, the PSC actually mandated us to file a detailed customer engagement plan, and that was filed July of 2016, and it really talks about how we will be going out to the communities and start engaging our customers, the elected officials, community boards, different communities in general. And our partners at the corporate level, corporate affairs has done a great job going into different service territories. So what we're doing is we're following the deployment plan. So as Tom had stated, we started in Staten Island. So our corporate folks started to engage the elected officials even before the communication network went up, because our customers are going to see things on the utility pole going, what is that? So with that said, our detailed plan is to send a 90-day postcard prior to our customers receiving the smart meters. What that means is it's really simple. It says smart meters are coming, and when you turn the back, it's the same slide that Tom had presented in regards to the benefits. And then about 45 days prior to our customers receiving their smart meter, they will get a letter explaining some of the process. For example, if they need to make an appointment because the meters are inside their house or apartment, or if they wanted to opt out of receiving a smart meter, there is the process and the instruction on how to start that process. And we really expect, when we were filing our business plan to get approval for this project, we benchmarked against similar utilities, and we found that about less than 1% of folks opting out of this program. And then also, our corporate folks have started the Energy Future campaign in the summertime. So if you see some of the subways and et cetera, it's not just about the smart meter, but it's the new way that Con Edison is going to be doing business and some of the REV initiatives and et cetera. So we're using television, we're using ad campaign to let the folks know that the smart meters are coming. And then also after our meter install vendors do install the smart meter, they will get a really nice door hanger saying you have a smart meter. Please go check on our website and start utilizing the tools to save money, et cetera, whatever they are concerned about. And then here, we just wanted to share some of the artifacts that our corporate folks helped us design. So we want the public to know that these contractors that are working with us are our partners on this project. So we made sure that they have this Con Edison logo and a contractor on their safety vest. And then also the vehicle wrap, which we are wrapping about 150 vehicles to let the public know that this is part of the Con Edison program. And it also has the vendor address and their name so they can see that it's affiliated. And just for us internally, we wanted to ensure, as National Grid had said, sensitivity training. So we made sure before any of the contractors started to go and actually deal with the customers, they are going through a couple different training at the corporate level. And also, you know, there are some scams that go around with the utility. We're also delivering training to make sure that the ad campaign that we pushed out a couple years ago, which means if a customer is ever concerned that the person who arrives at their home, they can call our call center and actually get confirmation who is in front of them and also their supervisor. So we're making sure that our contractors are going to be dealing with our customers in the way that Con Edison has always been very conscious about customer engagement. So this is actually it on the customer engagement plan on the project. So if anyone has any questions, please let us know.
Any questions? Barry?
How secure are these smart meters? I'm talking about hacking and stuff like that.
Very secure. So cybersecurity is a key element of this. The vendor that we actually selected underwent a detailed, thorough review by our IT team. In addition, actually starting this past week, we actually brought in another vendor, right? So we have the system up and running now. And over the next 6 weeks, they're going to be trying to hack into the system. So Con Edison is very concerned about cybersecurity. This vendor that we've selected has over 26 million smart meters installed throughout the country. And there's been no reported incidents. And we don't care if there's been no reported incidents. We're taking the extra effort to hire specialists that are going to try to drill in and actually get into the system over the next 6 weeks. It started this past Monday.
And just another question. For new developments going up, new houses,
Yep.
How are they being treated? Are they, even if they're not scheduled to have the smart meters?
So we're actually putting all new developments going up right now are getting smart meters.
Okay.
Right, all new developments. This way we're not putting an old meter in.
Right.
Right, there's a couple of areas where we have, in the Bronx, where we have like it's called AMR, it's a different technology. And just because we don't have the meter readers to read those areas, we're doing some isolated locations of a different metering. But that's everything in Brooklyn right now, everything going in is AMI.
Could I ask you, as far as the 465 meters already installed,
Yep.
are those new construction meters?
So those are actually not meters, those are what they call access points. So it's a router that's mounted on a utility pole, right? We've had about over 3,500 AMI meters deployed. A lot of those are new construction meters in Brooklyn.
How
So
many?
about 3,500 since June 2nd, when we started the deployment. So just to give you an idea, for new business, and it could be some like even legacy meters that fail. So we don't want to, if we have a meter that fails in Brooklyn, that's before we get, for deployment in April, we're going to put an AMI meter in that place. We don't want to, right? And so it's about 3,500 to date over the past couple of months.
And so the 3,500 are smart meters throughout Brooklyn.
Yep.
Where are they as far as new construction? You said majority
So there is,
construction.
yeah, so they're all over. It's not like one particular area. It could be anywhere dispersed throughout Brooklyn.
But how do you decide where do you start?
So really, the mass deployment is not going to start till April 1st. So the mass rollout, where we're going to come in with teams of.
Right, I get that.
Yep.
I saw,
Yep.
I heard it in the presentation,
Yeah.
but the 3,500 smart meters already installed.
Yep.
How did you decide? What were the deciding?
Yep, so what happens was, after,
Indicators.
yeah, so what we have is, after the IT systems went live, right, we made a decision that, okay, at this point in time, once the IT systems are up and can actually accept AMI meters, right, that any new business work, so we have work that's going on that's planned for years, we just said, okay, as of that date, June 2nd, any new meter that goes in for new business in Brooklyn, Queens, Manhattan, anywhere in a service territory, we're going to be putting AMI meters in. So you have buildings that go up, and these buildings are planned for months and months, and they're turned on, and they need meters to. So at that point in time, all of our meter and test folks that install meters and different groups that we have in Con Edison, they just, we replenish the warehouses with AMI meters, and that's what they go and install.
So do you have this mapped out as far as where the 3,500 are already installed?
I mean, I would know what addresses they are. I mean.
Have you mapped that out?
I haven't mapped that out, no. I haven't mapped to, so in order to, so as the meters are installed, right, not all those metering devices can actually link up with the communication network because we don't have the entire communication network up. But we would know address-wise and could show someone where the meters are.
So, okay. The access points, 465.
So I know where those are, exactly, yep.
And that's completed?
Well, we have about another 600 or so to go, and those installations are going to continue all the way up through April.
April of next year,
April of, yeah, so they have to be up before we put the meters in?
Right.
Yep.
And so I want to understand, let's say, for instance, public housing, the smart meters and the access points.
Yep.
Are the access points within the 465, within what would be the public housing development areas?
Right, so the 465 that we installed already, those are on Con Ed utility poles dispersed throughout the service territory. I mean, our plan is, with the AMI system, our plan is to reach every meter. So every meter that's installed has got to communicate. So I cannot tell you right now, there was no determination about where we started to put the meters in for new business, whether it's public housing. Everyone's going to get the meter itself, and really, as we start the deployment of the meters in Brooklyn, the meter installations are actually going to go from area to area, and you're not going to complete like one individual area, like one, we're not going to go to Bay Ridge and say, okay, we're going to do all the meters in Bay Ridge and then go to the next area, Sheepshead Bay or another different area, right? What it is you deploy the meters in areas according to the meter reader's routes, because you're deploying it in such a way that you can efficiently get the meters in, right, and also efficiently reduce the meter reader labor force, right? So that's the whole process while you're actually doing it in a certain way, right? So regarding public housing, if the public housing went up and it's new construction, they would have an AMI meter. If it's an older building, and the only reason why they would have an AMI meter is that they had a meter that failed, and they could have an AMI meter that replaced one of the legacy meters, the older meters.
So the 465, I'd imagine, as an access point, would be in the same area where the 3,500 smart meters have been
Not
installed?
necessarily, because the access point design is, we have a design issued for the entire service territory, and the areas that we focused on initially was the devices that are on Con Ed utility poles, right, which is certain areas of Brooklyn. I have a map that shows where
If
they
you
are.
can forward
I
that
can
map,
forward
that
that
would
map
be
to show you,
helpful.
right, so what we're doing is we're working on getting approval to put the other devices on streetlights, so we're back and forth with the, with the DOT and the agencies. And that would be the next phase. But I could show you where those access points are. I have a nice map that shows.
I appreciate
Okay.
that. Anyone else? And is there an added cost that's passed down to the customer because of this?
No, so this was all included as part of the rate case, so the company's rates didn't change for many years. They're not paying specifically for the meter, but everyone's rates went up because of all Con Ed's capital program. This last rate case, the exact dollar amount average, Antonio, is like $2 or $3 for the average customer on their rates. So that was the first time rates have gone up in many years for Con Ed since prior to 2013. So that's all included. So it's not like someone's not paying for that electric meter. So if they opt out, are they going to save money? If they opt out, they're actually going to incur more costs. So there's like a $9.50 per month fee for someone to come actually read the meter if they opt out. And if someone has an AMI meter and they want to remove it and replace it, there's a fee for that too, like $100 and something. So that's all covered by the rate case.
And the less than 1% who have
Opted out, actually the numbers in Staten Island right now, it's like less than 0.3%. Right, so if you look at, I'll give you some facts, right? Center Point in Texas did 2.2 million meters. There were 64 that opted out of 2.2 million. ComEd, they have like close to $4 million meters. I think it's like 1,000 or so that opted out. So we don't think there's going to be really many people that opt out, because you're losing a lot of the benefits. You're losing the fact that if you're out of power, the company's going to know right away. Or if you have a problem with your electrical system, right, we'll know right away if it's internal to your building. And also you have these programs that people can participate for energy usage and stuff, right, coming down the road. We're doing some pilots in Staten Island and Westchester, and also in Brooklyn. So it'll be a limited pilot where we'll look for customers. I think in Brooklyn, we're looking for small commercial customers to participate in programs, right? So.
And the program is to save?
So it would be variable pricing programs. So the thought was, with the AMI meter, right, you have visibility over what customers are using every 15 minutes of the day. The pilot's going to assess if you can go like to a demand type of charge. So really, if Con Edison's, a lot of our capital spend is associated with reinforcing the transformers and the cables to ensure we have power at that hottest day. If customers curtail their usages during that hottest day, you could overall reduce the capital spend and O&M expenses down the road. So the program is a program that was actually addressed in our customer engagement plan to actually go out and actually try different pricing programs. The rates are not going to be in effect until we do a very thorough analysis over the course of the next 3 years on this. So nothing is changing with customers' rates because of these smart meters right now. Any other questions?
Yes.
Yes.
Marty?
I apologize if you've already answered this, but how many access points will there be in a community? What is the range?
The average?
So if you look at across all of Brooklyn, it's 1,100. Across all of Staten Island was 178. Westchester was about 600 devices. So it's, could be one every 500 foot or something, square foot.
But is it based on per capita or distance in
It's really distance to the,
blocks
it's
or-
really distance to the meters, and the
Because
thing.
Westchester seems to have a lot less density.
A lot less density in Westchester. They got 500. So it's really like these meters themselves. The way this AMI system works, if you have a density of meters, the meters actually talk to one another and can communicate across the meter, and then you would put an access point up to actually pick up a whole block of meters, right? So it really depends on meter density, right? In certain areas, you know, we have to put relays and access points to reach meters, right? But as a rule of thumb, you probably have one, you know, every 600 or 500 to 1,000 foot. Question?
So when you reduce voltage, does the smart meter now allow you to pinpoint that better rather than just say the Greenwood sub-pocket?
That's exactly. So we'll be able to like reduce voltage and know where our problem is, right? So, and that gives us a benefit. So if we're looking at an area, say Greenpoint, right? We reduce it in Greenpoint, and we say, listen, there's only 3 or 4 customers that are getting down to that are really causing a problem. They're running 2 or 3 volts lower than everyone else. Then we have the capability of actually going and adding cable to reinforce that, which would enable you to reduce more. So it's specifically, it's going to be a benefit, and we'll be able to optimize the voltage, you know, around the clock, 24 hours around the clock.
Would you be able to reduce the voltage for everybody in that area, or only
It would be for everyone. So it's really what it is. It's you're going to be reducing the voltage back at the substation. So the substation is where they have the transformers with the tap changes. So you'll reduce it to that whole area, but you'll know what your limiting factor is based on the 2 or 3 or 10 meters that are running in on a hairy edge. Yes.
How long does it take to replace a meter, like if you have a home?
Yep.
And you're coming in to replace that meter?
Yep.
Would it take 1 day or 1 day?
No, we're pretty quick. A lot quicker than National Grid.
Let them know, there may be some new regulations.
I'm only kidding. It's about 10 minutes, about 10 minutes to 15 minutes, right? So, you know, the customer, there's a whole process where they come in, there's a photo taken of your existing meter, that meter read. You pull the meter, you replace the meter, and then you take a photo of the meter with the new meter, making sure that there's no damage or anything like that, and then they leave. So it's about 10 minutes to replace a meter.
Some customers have asked to have meters moved from the inside the property to outside the property.
Yeah.
Would they be able to do it then, or?
No, that's a totally different effort. You know, and I don't know what their reason for moving it from inside to outside, if it's because they don't like people coming reading their meters. Well, with the AMI system, we would never need access to read the meters again, right? So that would take care of the problem with people, you know, people knocking on your door to read the meters early in the morning. So this is all to enable a remote metering, reading.
And if I have an issue with the meter, if I believe it's not correct, or there's a problem with it, what would that happen?
You call Patty Kim. No. So with the meters are all, you know, they're tested, right? So the meters are, the company that's making the meters tests them, and then what Con Ed does when we get the big shipments coming in, we do a sample test on those meters. But if you have an issue, you would call Con Edison.
Well, I want to thank you both
Okay.
for your presentation. We appreciate it, and then we're looking forward to
I'll send you the presentation, and I'll show you that other map, all right?
as well as the map itself.
I'll send you that, okay?
Fantastic. Thank you very much. And we're going to move forward with New York City Administration for Children's Services, Nigel Nathaniel, Director, Office of Community Engagement and Partnerships. Thank you, Doug.
Hi, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I'm Nigel Nathaniel, Director of Community Engagement and Partnership with New York City Administration for Children's Services. And
Nigel, I'm sorry. I wanted to just ask, Con Edison and National Grid, and this may seem very offline conversation, but if I don't say it now, I'll forget. We are entering into what is the 30-day period for the high school process of the specialized high school SAT test period. And so we're trying to make sure that we ask our utility companies as partners if you could send, you know, those notifications, messages to see if you can explore the opportunity on the bill, whether it's electronic or paper or both, to be able to send a message to customers. And clearly you can't pick one or the other, so it has to be one centralized message, giving them simple message of where to sign up and the test sign up period with the website. And it's to increase the opportunities for students to acknowledge that they have this in place, and within the next 30 days, they have to register to take the test, and the test is in October. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Possibly every community board tweeting this out, you know, using a real social media.
Mm-hmm.
If you could send us both some language, I'll see what I can do.
I would most appreciate that. It's beyond the tweeting. I hear you. I'd like to see the opportunities to, we're gonna reach out to 311 as well. And that's the issue. It's the late in the game, but I know that we've partnered in the past when I was a council member to do that type of messaging. It doesn't happen often with the utility companies, but I think this merits that opportunity for a public announcement. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Yes. Absolutely, Renee. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Mr. Nathaniel.
So,
It's all about the kids.
So I'm going to ask members of the team to introduce themselves, starting with Natasha.
Natasha Steve, Bedford Stuyvesant Community Partnership Program Coordinator.
Thank you.
Good morning, Loretta Williams from New York City Children's Services, and I am from the office of ACS, and Community Program Associate for Bed-Stuy.
Good morning, Latansha Aiken, Deputy Director for Division of Child Protection, right here at 345 Adams Street, and the Child Advocacy Center, 320 Skimmerwood Street.
Rashida Sykes, East New York Community Partnership Program Coordinator. Good morning, I'm Raul Rubio. I am the coordinator for the Bushwick Community Partnership.
And everybody should have a brochure of the Community Engagement and Partnership, and inside of the brochure are the names for Rashida, names and contact information for Rashida, Natasha, and Raul, and information on the monthly meetings that the Community Partnerships has. Everybody should have a copy of the PowerPoint. So, overview of community engagement and partnership. And I was sitting there thinking, you know, this is the first time I've followed two energy companies, and what's the similarity between our Office of Community Engagement and how we represent the Administration for Children's Services. So we oftentimes say we are like electricians, similar to Con Ed, who just left, because we connect people to power. That's the responsibility of our office, connecting people to power, connecting community constituents to service providers, to resources. And within the Administration for Children's Services, our responsibility, again, is promoting the goodwill of children's services and the work that we do. There's a certain perception out there about children's services, and it's that we remove children, and that's the only thing that we do. And our responsibility in the Community Engagement Office is to make people aware of the various services that we provide. We also build partnerships with different organizations in various communities because it's important to construct and develop that safety net for children and families within our community. In addition, one of the main strategies that we have is our 11 community partnership programs. These 11 community partnership programs are funded by the Administration for Children's Services. And again, in Brooklyn, we have 3 of them, in Bedford-Stuyvesant, in East New York, and in Bushwick. Over here, you would see the other communities across the city where we have community partnership programs. Oops. Okay, the PowerPoint may not become cooperating with me, but still, with the community partnership programs, we train community constituents to participate in what we call family teen conferencing. And we also train and recruit community constituents to monitor and supervise foster care visits. We also conduct, our office also conduct what we call demystifying ACS workshops. And again, that's one way of informing the community on what ACS does to protect children. How many people are aware of preventive services? So the Administration for Children's Services contracts with 60 different organizations that provides preventive services to over 45,000 children across the city, right? So every year we provide services, preventive services. This is services before children, for children and families who are not in foster care. So 44 to 45,000 children receive its preventive services. Presently in foster care, there are 9,000 kids in foster care. About 25 years ago in the early 1990s, at the height of the crack epidemic, there were 50,000 kids in foster care. Presently, we have 9,000 kids in foster care. Each year, ACS and our Division of Child Protection investigates about 60,000 families for allegations of abuse, maltreatment, and neglect. With these 60,000 families, we come in contact through investigations with about 9,000 children. And the perception out there in many communities for many people is that once we investigate, we remove. That's not the case. We do 60,000 investigations each year, and on average, 3,500 kids are removed from their homes across the city. So again, with the demystifying ACS, we inform people or we demystify that idea that once ACS knocks on the door, we remove kids. We are at the Administration for Children's Services. We are serving over 100,000 kids in our Early Learn program. It's the largest child care Head Start program in the country. So we service 100,000 kids each year in our Early Learn programs. We are also responsible for the juvenile justice system in New York City. That changed maybe about 6 years ago, and on average, we serve about 300 kids in our, what we would call limited secure and partial secure systems. So part of the demystifying ACS workshops is coming out to the community and having a discussion with communities about the services and supports that we do within the Administration for Children's Services. We also host a number of community events. Again, we participate in events that are organized by other entities, and we also organize our own events and invite other entities.
Nigel, can you just tell me, of the 9,000, how many represent Brooklyn?
Good question, and I don't have the answer, but I can get the answer for you when I get back to the office this afternoon. I would venture to say that because of the volume and density of families in the Bronx and Brooklyn, many of those 9,000 would come from either Brooklyn and the Bronx, but I can give you the exact numbers.
Thank you.
So the CPPs and community organizing We are, again, I speak about the connections, connecting people to power, connecting services to other services. We are always engaging community leaders, as we are doing here today in joint planning. And with the community engagement and partnership, one of the purposes is to ensure that the information and the discussions that we engage in, it affects and impacts practice and policy. It's important so that these discussions are not just discussions, it has an impact on the way we serve and support children and families. We mobilize networks of public and private stakeholders, so we are working internally with city agencies. We have consistent meetings with NYCHA. We are having consistent meetings with HRA to see collaboratively and system-wise how the families that we are serving, that overlap of families that we are serving together, how we can increase the level of coordination and the service delivery to those families. CPPs in the community. So again, we have those community partnerships in the community, and I would ask Raul Rubio, the coordinator for the Bushwick Community Partnership, to come up and speak about the work that the 3 community partnerships does, and specifically to Bushwick. Raul?
I don't know if I need a microphone, but good
Raul,
morning.
for the purposes of the video, yes, I would appreciate that.
Okay, so again, good morning or afternoon, actually, at this point. The biggest takeaway that we want you guys to walk away with, because you're hearing a lot of stuff about ACS, is that we are a bridge between ACS and the community. Our network is, I can speak for Bushwick, my network is a group of somewhere about 50 different agencies that try to do service coordination. As Nigel said, we're electricians, we connect people to power sources. So if you look at the flyer, you'll be able to see some of the stuff that we've done. Bed-Stuy's done a lot of work with the Campaign for Hunger, is connected with them and supports a local food pantry there. They also had, according to the lines of fatherhood, had a daddy-daughter dance. Now, if you think about it in the grand scheme of child welfare, is that something that directly affects the safety of children? And we think it does, because if you're supporting the community and families, then you're increasing the effect in the community. East New York, with their foster parent support, they actually, earmarked families that are in foster care and are able to spend funds to be able to get them, like tickets to a Broadway show. Again, this is another way when families who are in foster care are visiting and are doing more interaction, they get to reconnect better, and then they can get out of the system faster. I'm highlighted for community collaboration. My district manager can attest to the fact that I do a lot of work in Bushwick with different agencies, trying to connect agencies that are doing stuff with other agencies that are trying to do some better work. We actually connected with one of my better partners, which is Ujima, which does a lot of work with youth. We were able to connect with them, the precinct, the Brooklyn Borough office, and we're able to coordinate a mural based on cops and kids, which is a recurring theme that we do. So we have events where and young children come together. We've done dinners, we've done flag football games, we've done basketball games, and mostly the kids are outscoring the cops, except we lost the flag football game, and I hope for a rematch coming up. But those are the kind of things that we try to foster. So it's not so much as just ACS, it's ACS in the community. So if the particular community boards that have CPPs, please connect to them. I gave everybody one of the flyers that at least has a breakdown of my network and the kind of stuff that my network does. Just because I'm in Bushwick doesn't mean I can't work in Williamsburg, Crown Heights, or all of our other networks do. We also branch out to local communities. So reach out to us. We can connect you to services that you might not know about, because that's the idea. We try to make sure that our circles are all connected. Thank you.
Thank you, Raul. So just in keeping with that connection theme, it's like the 3 CPPs, the 3 community partnerships, they are proud that if there's a resource that someone is looking for, I remember at some point somebody sent an email asking for electronic wheelchair, and Raul blasted out an email to maybe about 200 people, and within 2 days, there was a used electronic wheelchair that was given to a community constituent. Sometimes it's about a substance abuse program for a 13-year-old, and most of the programs are serving 16 to 21. You call Natasha, if she doesn't have that information, she would get that information from her network and be able to connect that family again to power, to that program. The other area I would want to emphasize is our Division of Child Protection. Those are the folks that do, I said about the 60,000 investigations each year, which touch close to 90,000 children. We have Latanja Aiken here, the Deputy Director, and she's responsible for Bensonhurst, Bay Ridge, Borough Park, and Coney Island. And she would speak about child protection, and she would also speak about, we have preventive services that are serving 44,000 children across the city. However, in southern Brooklyn, we have found that there's a gap, and we are working to fill or bridge that gap where there's some language barriers and services for the children and families in those particular neighborhoods. I would ask Latanja to speak about child protection and that service gap that we are hoping to fill.
So good afternoon, everyone, again. As Nigel stated, I'm from Division of Child Protection, and we're the frontline workers. We're the ones who go out and initiate the investigation and make that assessment and decide whether or not children are going to be removed or remain in the home. So our goal is to keep the children in the home, and in order to do that, this is why we try to get our partnership with the community as well as our preventive services. And so for Adams Street, which I cover, is CDs 10, 11, 12, 13, and sometimes 7. The Child Advocacy Center, that's our part of the agency that does the severe physical abuse and sexual abuse. They cover the entire Brooklyn. And they coordinate with Safe Horizons and with the NYPD Detective Squad. So they're all in one office together. So one of the concerns we're having is because of the language barriers. So Adams Street, which is Zone F, is the melting pot. That's where a lot of our immigrant families come in our cultures. So we were looking at the different languages, and there's a lot of languages that we struggle with in order to help these people and to help service them. Because we have to understand their culture, and they have to also understand what happens now that they're in New York and what child services looks like. And for a lot of them, they are afraid of government, so they initially do not want to talk to us. They're very afraid to let us know their needs. And sometimes it's just making sure that they understand and just empowering them. And because we're not always able to communicate with them or connect them to the right people, this is something that we're concerned. So just to name a few of the languages that we're struggling with, it's Uzbek, all different types of the Asian language. There's Cantonese, there's Mandarin, there's Fukanese, there's one that I was told about yesterday, which is a form of Cantonese from my staff, and it's called Fukwai or Fukwai, something like that. So these are just a little bit of the struggles that we're having, and meeting with the Office of Community Affairs, they're trying to help us find out what's available in the communities so that we can go out, we can have them come in, talk to us during debriefing and tell us what they can offer. In order for us to better help the family, we have to understand their culture and we have to know what's best for them. So if you guys can kind of tell us what the needs are, help us with the language barrier, because we have the people there, but sometimes if a family is in need of counseling. You know, depending on what type of counseling, it's hard to get an interpreter because that specific social worker may not want to use that translator because it breaks down the interaction between the two. So these are things that, you know, I'm hoping we can better collaborate with and have a better relationship so that, you know, again, we can demystify the thing that we want to take people's children, because we really don't. We're here to help, and we can help. We provide pack and plays, we connect them with different service providers. Whatever we can do to keep the children in the home and maintain the home, that's the goal. We really don't want to take anyone's children. And not everything is high risk, which means it would go to a preventive agency. So again, what we would consider a low risk is, for example, you know, we go into a home and we realize that it's just parent-teenage conflict. You know, parent may be an older person from, you know, old school generation, so they don't understand that young people don't come in the house at 8 o'clock anymore. So they want the 16-year-old in at 8 o'clock. So this is causing arguments and conflict. If we can connect them with, you know, a service provider in the community that can kind of work with them on family relations and understanding what teenagehood is like right now in 2017, it helps strengthen it, as opposed to the report keeps getting called in because the arguments are escalating, it's now beginning to become physical, it now increases the risk factors. And we know with increase that can lead to court intervention, and sometimes that's where removals lead to, because we get parents that say, I can't do it anymore. And those are the things that we try to avoid. So hopefully, you know, again, we can kind of partner and get the things that we need in the community, especially for Adams Street, because as I said, we're a melting pot. We have all different cultures and ethnicities right there in that community. You know, I left out Coney Island. Coney Island is major. You know, it's a different type of assessment than when we're going into Bay Ridge or Bensonhurst. So we just want to figure out what's in the community that can help sustain the people that reside in that community, because not everyone wants to go outside of their community to get whatever services that, you know, are needed. So if you have any questions, I'll be here to answer.
And to follow up what Latanja said, the strategy is to do consistent outreach and meet and connection. So on September 28th, we are having a meet and greet at the Hamilton Library at 10:30. We would be sending invitation to the community board district managers for Bensonhurst, Borough Park, Bay Ridge, and Coney Island. So, you know, we want to start that discussion, or in some instances, for some people, we restart that discussion about how we can identify the appropriate services and resources to keep children safe and keep children safe in their homes and in the community. And also one of the tactics within the strategy is having organizations like the Advanced Behavioral Services come to the borough office and meet the child protective staff. And, you know, so it's about building relationships. So relationships build trust. So the child protective staff would have an idea who they are referring families to. And, you know, so, and again, creating that safety net for children and families. One of the other areas I always like to emphasize when we do our demystifying ACS workshops, which the average time is an hour to 2 hours, depending on what the community or stakeholders are asking for. We have a new initiative, which is the Safe Sleep Initiative. Each year, unfortunately, on average for the past 10 years, 50 3-month and younger babies die in New York City on what we would call unsafe sleeping practices. So every year for the past 10 years, 50 babies, 3 months and younger, 6 months and younger, that die for these unsafe sleeping practices. And we would speak about ABC, right? that babies that age should sleep alone. A, sleep alone. B, on their backs. And C, in a crib, right? So it's simple. And we believe, and I think everybody would agree, that is those 50 babies too many that could have survived and become productive citizens. So that's something that we speak about, and we give, we can do a whole workshop on that, but that's important to us. Because again, these are 56 months, 3 months, and younger that are dying each year in New York City, and it's completely avoidable. One other area, so because of the nature of your job as district managers and representing various agencies, the Borough President's office, each one of you all are mandated reporters. And there's an office of Safety First, that fields calls from mandated reporters, and also people who have made reports to the State Central Registry about abuse and neglect, and the Office of Child Safety First. So if you made a report about abuse and neglect, and you wanted to find out who is the child protective specialist, who is the supervisor, or get limited information about the case, and I emphasize limited because all of our investigations are confidential. You can call the Office of Child Safety First, and the number is, it's not up, we don't have it up here, but it's 718-KIDS-SAFE. So 718-KIDS-SAFE, and that translates into 718-543-7233. So 718-543-7233, and that's 718-KIDS-SAFE. If for some reason you wanted additional information about a case, a family, you're not sure if ACS is still investigating the family, that office can assist with that. And on the PowerPoint, you have contact information for myself, for the Assistant Commissioner of the unit. Loretta's information is there, and Natasha, Raul, and Rashida. I don't think we have Latanja's information there. So again, Latanja is the person who, she's the Deputy Director for the Division of Child Protection. Her staff is the one that does the actual investigations for Bensonhurst, Borough Park, Bay Ridge, and Coney Island, right? And again, we have child protective specialists across the city, and right, I wouldn't go out citywide, but we have child protective specialists that cover the entire Brooklyn area. So, questions?
Yes, Eddie.
Hi, my name is Eddie Mark, and I am the district manager for CB13, which happens to be Coney Island. I just wanted to know if you had in the past a CPP in Coney Island or something nearby?
So Jeremy would remember this, that about back in 2000, 2004, 2005, we had what we call service planning areas, and we had one in Coney Island. However, we kind of system changed, things changed, and so I guess the short answer is no. We don't have a community partnership program in Coney Island. What we are trying to do now is, again, build up some type of extended relationships. It may not look as specific and as strategic and maybe as funded as the 3 community partnerships. However, we are looking to bring service providers together to assist us in creating that safety net. So the short answer is no. However, we are trying to reconstitute something that looks similar to a community partnership. Yes.
Hi, my name is Marnie Lice. I'll be the district manager of Community Board 11, which covers Bath Beach and Bensonhurst. And I just have to say, I'm a little bit surprised that there's a gap in communication, and I'm wondering if you reached out to NYU Lutheran and Maimonides Medical Center, which has many doctors and officers throughout our communities that speak the languages of our community, of our residents.
So I do want to say that we do have a partnership with Maimonides, and once a month, one of my managers goes there for their meeting, and they talk about different families that have come within Maimonides and whatever questions that they have. But it's still a struggle because sometimes they look to us to provide specific services for families, and if the language is not available, there's nothing we can do. But we do have relationships with Lutheran also, but there is a partnership where monthly we're meeting with Maimonides.
So is it internally within your office that doesn't have translators, or is it the service providers?
It's the
whether
service
it's counseling and
It's the service providers. We can provide translators. That's not the issue.
Right.
But it's the services sometimes. And then some of the agencies that we're contracting to, they don't have the language.
So it's an education pipeline issue, right? So if you have in this culture what is a spoken language of a population that is not entering these fields, you're not going to have what is the filling of what are these positions, right? And so amongst the Asian culture, if we're not starting to recruit within these careers so that they can help and assist, then that will continue to be a gap.
These are
That's-
discussions we're having ongoingly because we see it increase.
And do you have any partnerships with, let's say, CUNY at Hunter College to see what type of, within the social work program department, where an MSW perhaps of these spoken languages could be fed into your system?
So I do know nowadays we have been going out to like, what's it called when you go and you kind of represent the agency and tell them what your needs are.
Mm-hmm.
What are they called? When
Is
you-
it orientation?
The orientations and when they have their job fair.
Right.
So we are, putting it out there and seeing what we can do.
But it's to start them so that this can fill what is an internship opportunity, right? Because then if there's an internship and it's coordination, right? So NYU Lutheran and Maimonides have a void trying to collaborate where we have our CUNY system to identify what departments can we work with to be able to have secure internship, perhaps paid internships, which are more favorable, to be able to attract this population of that spoken language interest, because the MSW programs, while they're in school, they're trying to figure out where they're going to go next, right? And so you want to catch them when they're in that position and frame of mind, as opposed to afterwards. And we see it within the STEM program, right? Like we lost our scientists, our engineers, because we stopped pushing these types of careers, and now we're trying to fill the gap, and we're trying to backfill, right? And that's harder to do. It takes us 10, 20 years so that the K through college production of new students that graduate with those backgrounds are going to be actually available.
I'm just not clear because Maimonides is in my district, and I wasn't aware these meetings were going on. But what I'm not getting is, because Maimonides, I know they have, patient reps or that help out with any language, Yiddish, Russian.
But it's a specific language by region. So the Fukienese region in Fujian, China, will speak a very different dialect, right? And so if that particular region is not represented within the service delivery provider, then that particular client who's trying to receive the service will lose translation of what is being said because they may not understand the dialect.
And that's what happens. So for example, with the Fukienese, it starts out, they'll say they understand math
they'll then start to say, well, I didn't understand, didn't get that. So as it's unfolded, we're seeing it. But we have the basic.
ACS part or from Mohammed's part?
Well, I don't want to direct it directly at Maimonides because it's not just of Maimonides.
Right, it's everywhere.
It's when
I
we're trying
understand
to
that. I'm
refer
just
from preventive.
using it as an example, right?
Right.
Maimonides at the hospital, an example, service provider, right?
Right. So, as you said, they're able to kind of connect sometimes, but
Right.
when they cannot, they will refer to us. So when it's time for us to connect outside, if we send them to a program over here and they don't have that specific language, yes, we can provide a translator, but depending on what the need is, if it's a type of counseling, we do evidence-based, if it's a type of counseling, they're not gonna wanna utilize the outside translator. They would rather that social worker or that psychiatrist speak the language so that there's quote-unquote nothing lost in translation. So that's where we're seeing our struggles are coming.
Right. And some of the risk indicators would be the domestic violence, substance abuse, mental health, there's mediation. So it's not, right, so it's not only, we may have relationships with Maimonides and NYU Hospital. However, it's those other risk indicators, DV, substance abuse, mental health, that when, as Latanja said, we have to refer families for those services, that's where the gap is. And, Latanja gave the example of teenagers and parents, right? How do we have somebody who provides mediation services for the family in that language?
Yes.
So just wondering, because I'm really trying to wrap my head around this, is there a way that you can partner with DYCT for the next round of RFPs to partner with CBOs in these neighborhoods to bring those services, counseling services, or whatever the unmet need is, so that you can provide that?
We have had conversations with them, and it's continuing. It doesn't always mesh in the most, systematic way. However, yes, we have had those conversations.
And I do want to say this is happening, like we partner very well with Sunshine. And they, as Nike pointed out, we have their information. And when it's a community-based, they're not always very forthcoming with giving us the information. Community-based also sometimes are not going into the home. Sometimes we need you to go into that home so that you can get an assessment, because people present very different when they're not in their comfort zone.
Sure, I'm referring more to the social work aspect and the services provided outside the home.
Right.
So those services.
But we do try to partner as much as we can with those, and part of it is learning who's out there and where they are, and how we can better get a relationship and work together.
To that point, I'm not sure what your dynamic is with the Arab population or Arab community, Arab speaking community, but I did jot down some contacts for you. And they are mostly in Bensonhurst,
Yes.
Bay Ridge, so
Thank you.
you're welcome. There you go. And I have my contact information on top too.
So you see, that's what we like, come to a meeting and make immediate connections. So thank you for that. You had a question, comment?
Yes.
No. Okay.
Eddie.
Yeah. I have a question about the foster care. I understand that, you have programs for the foster care, but I have a CBO in my community that deals with adoption. Have you looked into for permanency? Because as you know, the foster care, they get aged out. If they don't get on their feet by 18, 21, they have their whatever experience they have to go into the real world. If there was more push on an adoption part, the group that I'm working or has in my community is You Gotta Believe. They're more for the teenagers, which they do, they say, look as future prevention for homelessness. Because they understand that once the kids get out of foster care, they're your new homeless population. So the question there is, have ACS pushed more for adoption groups?
Right, as you said, adoption is part of a permanency plan. Part of the permanency plan is return to parents. So most of the children that are in foster care, the permanency plan is to return to parent or return to family. In some instances, adoption is a permanency plan, and there's a specialized unit within ACS that focuses on adoption and decreasing the time that when parental rights are terminated and when an adoption occurs is reduced. So there's a unit that is working specifically on that. Previously, we did have a contract with You Got to Believe, and we no longer have the contract with them. However, each of the 28 foster care agencies that we have across New York City, there is a plan in terms of preparing youth for adulthood. I think we call it something differently now. However, that is one area I would be transparent that we definitely have to improve, right, with the young adults.
It's just more that, because there's not many that are teenage adoption agencies. There's adoption agencies for very young kids, which are desirable, but when they get to the age of 13 to 18, nobody wants to adopt a teenager. And this one group has that capacity, a very good turnaround rate, and yet you guys didn't support them. And I'm just curious, is there an option if this group could do what you guys didn't want them to do, or fund them? You didn't want to fund them. What is the option then?
I cannot respond to that, but what I will do is definitely connect you to the Assistant Commissioner for Family Permanency to ensure, either by email or in some discussion, to explain ACS policy on why that contract wasn't renewed. I don't have that information on why the contract wasn't renewed, but we will definitely make the connection.
And Eddie, if you could forward that to us as well, so that we could try to interface with the agency on some of those answers as well.
Thanks.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yes, definitely do it.
I'm just curious about who's initiating the complaints, what category we're talking about. The schools, is the educational system primarily initiating the complaints, or is there diverse communities in Southern Brooklyn? Where is it coming from, or is it the children or having the conflicts with the parents?
It varies. They're more so mandated reporters because they get exposure, but it varies.
And overall, across the city, and I'm sure it's the same for Brooklyn, again, we have many categories of mandated reporters, and at least 33 to 35% of the overall reports to the State Central Registry comes from the public school systems, because that's where not all, but most of our children have the most interaction. So yes, Sharice, that at least 35% of the reports to the State Central Registry, that's where all the reports go in Albany and then gets filtered to us here in New York City, ACS, comes from the public school system. So we have all of our contact information here. If you would like to get more information for your community about ACS, please reach out to me, please reach out to Loretta. If your community is in Bed-Stuy, Bushwick, or East New York, you can contact people over here. So thank you so much, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you very much, and we'll pass along what would be a contact we have at the Asian Society to talk about that education pipeline piece with the Asian community, to see how they can collaborate with you in order to fill that void, perhaps have service delivery organizations that have that void, so that there's a very specific tie to what careers you want to identify. And with that in mind, I want to just call our last panel, the New York Academy of Medicine Age-Friendly Brooklyn Initiative. Asia? Asia, very good. Asia Badi, Senior Policy Associate. It's right here.
Thank you so much. It's so actually interesting speaking after ACS because some of the things that you mentioned about families with children is very similar to older adults. Brooklyn is incredibly diverse and becoming more diverse, and secondly, people want to do programming and events and activities in the communities that they live and grow in. So I'm going to speak to you a little bit about the older adult population in Brooklyn, as well as how the city is planning for this aging population and what the vision for age-friendly Brooklyn is. Let me make sure. So I'm happy to share the presentation by email. I also have some other handouts I'll give as I go along. I'll speak to you a little bit about what the New York Academy of Medicine is, what age-friendly, what the demographics of older adults in Brooklyn is, as well as what we do with age-friendly and what that vision is. The New York Academy of Medicine seeks to advance the health of people in urban centers. We do that through our Institute of Urban Health, our world-class medical historical library, as well as our 2,000 fellows that are elected by their peers. Our historical library is pretty interesting. It is a public library, and you're welcome to come visit. We have a museum. We are in East Harlem, but we have some amazing things, including 500-year-old anatomy books and George Washington's original bottom dentures. So it's actually quite interesting to go there. But our current priorities are healthy aging, disease prevention, and eliminating health disparities. And we serve as a secretariat for Age-Friendly NYC, which is a public-private partnership with the Mayor's Office and City Council. So let me tell you a little bit about older adults in Brooklyn. They are an important part of the fabric of Brooklyn. We know that the population is increasing. We know that they are a large part of the economic system. Many of them continue to work to support themselves. They are the big spenders. They are a large percentage of the voting population. And we know nationally that they are very, very much a part of the people that donate to different programs and nonprofits, as well as donate their time, which is very, very important to many of the organizations that are CBOs and are in our communities. And we know that that population in Brooklyn, there is a range of how much of the percentage of the population is older adult. I did bring some by community board areas. We know that in Coney Island, it has like 20% older adults, which is the highest on the end. And some of the other ones at least are at 8%. But all of this overall is growing. We're seeing in Brooklyn alone, there'll be a 46% increase by 2040 from 300,000 older adults to 430,000, which is a higher percentage increase of the population than the whole city of New York. And it's diverse, just like New York City. Brooklyn is even more diverse. There are many languages spoken. Many of our older adults, are foreign-born. Many of them don't speak English primarily, and understanding that is really important for the programming that we're creating for them, and thinking about what type of cultural programming and what type of language access that we want to do. And we know that the city is responding to this by doing much better and more variety of language access, just like they need to do at ACS. And we're trying to encourage thinking outside that box and providing different programming. But this population is different than what our older adult population we used to think of. 60% of them do not have a disability. Actually, most of them are pretty physically active and healthy. When they hit around 75, they start noticing more disabilities, and one of the big primary ones is the ambulatory difficulty, which is difficulty walking long distances, standing for a long time, and that sort of influences what type of accommodations that older adults would benefit from to stay engaged in the community. We know that many of the older adults do have to work. They are on limited incomes, so it is very tight. They're very dependent on programs like SCREE and SNAP to help supplement their income. And so we know that poverty is an issue and concern. So those programs that we can offer within city agencies, like through Parks and Recs and in the libraries, are really beneficial to them because they can't afford to pay for them separately. And we know that there are disparities within New York City based on neighborhood. At the Academy, we look at how neighborhood characteristics, what makes up your neighborhood and how that impacts your health, influence the health outcomes. So we know that due to years of racial segregation and disparities, that many of our communities older adults are subjugated to negative community impacts for a lot longer. So therefore, though they may be passing away of the same things like cancer and heart disease, they're passing away earlier because they don't have a walkable community. They don't have access to healthy foods. They don't have, they have lower quality housing. So how do we think about that when we're trying to help engage and plan for our communities? So Age Friendly NYC was created in 2007. It's a one-of-a-kind partnership between the Mayor's Office, New York City Council, and the Academy, and works to maximize the social, physical, and economic participation of older people to improve their health and well-being and strengthen communities. So we're not looking to create a separate but equal system for older adults. We're looking to really think about the fact that the city overall is aging, and how do we help allow people to stay engaged and participate throughout their life cycle. We are overseen by a commission appointed by the mayor, which the borough president and all 5 borough presidents sit on, as well as many of the other, we have agency representatives, as well as civic and other leaders that represent senior serving organizations. They sort of give us the vision, ideas of where we should focus on, but all of our work is informed by senior surveys, which I'll talk to you a little bit more about. Sorry. And we believe in the vision of active aging, which predisposes that you can slow or actually reverse the disability trajectory of like physical and psychological downfall if you keep people physically active and socially active. So the idea is if you can create environments that people can stay active, they're not going to become as disabled as they grow older. And we use this through a World Health Organization framework of areas that we want to impact. So these are the 8 areas, and they hit all parts of your community, whether that's housing, transportation, social participation, and outdoor spaces and buildings. Our process is top-down, bottom-up, which looks at working at the public sector and at the private sector. We've worked with businesses, libraries, and faith community areas, all to improve the neighborhood level. And this is all informed by feedback by older people. So we've done thousands of surveys with older people throughout the city, and they've told us really what they want. So let me talk to you a little bit about what they told us and what those improvements were. Also, what we've also found is that sorry, I'm skipping ahead and not keeping up with my notes. We had one, and that was released in 2010, and now we have a new one that just came at the end of July. Have you seen it? No, is it online? Yes, so then this second document is, and actually on our Twitter account, it's a pinned account, so you can click on it. So, and it's actually important to see because it is the mayor's commitments to what will make age-friendly. So we have our commission that is seated by the mayor that gives us our vision. The other piece is these commitments, where the mayor went to, Mayor de Blasio actually went to all of his agencies and said, what can you do, what are you doing, and what can you do to make the city more age-friendly? And some of it is things that are continuations of projects that they're doing, but sort of adding the aging lens, but others are commitments that we really want them to go on and really improve. So for example, they said that they will maximize the use of parks and recreation centers for older adults. So they say that. So I spoke at Parks and Recs a few weeks ago, letting them know that the mayor is committed to that, but so they should use that as an opportunity to provide more programming. And I'm asking you so that you can also go back to your Parks and Recs and say that we want you to provide programming. I know I have older adults in this area, they would benefit from those programming. And the idea is sort of to think outside the senior center box, because not everybody wants to go to a senior center. Actually, 90% of older adults don't go to senior centers, and some of those senior centers we know are not as accessible, but there is a library, there is a rec center close by. So the idea is using the facilities and just being able to expand programming. So let me show you a little bit of like what the So we worked with the city on two things that older adults told us that a lot of times they couldn't walk or they would avoid walking. I was actually talking to someone whose husband is an intern at Montefiore, and he has a patient who says that she doesn't walk because she doesn't have a place to sit, and she gets worried, so she doesn't get any exercise. So we've been working on through a federal city walkability grant to provide benches, and the idea is that if you provide benches, people are more likely to go out because they know that there's a place to sit. We also found that it had a secondary impact, that people would walk the same time every day and they made friends. And social isolation is a big issue for older adults, so this was sort of a nice way to get people out in the community. Anyone can request a bench. I know you guys get the letters from the DOT that they're going to put a bench in, but you can actually put a request in. You can just do that through 311. And the idea is to think about spots that your older adults may be living or walking to, and where would be a good placement of a bench to help make them be able to be more mobile. The second piece was the street modifications that now is part of Vision Zero, the idea of making safe streets for seniors, because we found that some of the older adults, many of them were the highest percent that were passing away in traffic accidents. So there was a move to actually make these certain intersections more safe. And those are things that you know. You see the curb cuts, the extended walking times, those kind of parts were part of the Safe Street for Seniors program, but that has rolled into the Vision Zero program. You look like you have a question, no? Yeah, no? Yeah?
I'm waiting.
Okay. We also worked on, like as I mentioned, access to parks. So there was the Open Parks Initiative, the idea of thinking about parks that are accessible to everyone. Like I said, I spoke to the borough directors and managers at parks, because we talk about the fact that you want to think about how you're providing this amazing programming that's all for free for communities that really benefit from them, and thinking about how can you do those things in a way that older adults can access it. So they are doing more accessible parks, as well as programming that older adults can participate that's all free, or at rec centers there's a very nominal annual fee.
Is the first picture removing the fence?
Yes.
As a contribution to age-friendly?
It's actually the Open Parks Initiative. And age-friendly is part of it because we work with them. The idea of like thinking of the park being more accessible and open, and part of some of those changes, some of the work we do with age-friendly and at the Academy is really working with both city planning and architects and parks planning about rethinking the way that you create parks and public spaces, so that it's more open and easy to engage with the community and doesn't feel locked off, right? So the idea that having a park without a fence and having more benches for people to sit, there is that interplay. I think we were avoiding benches because people were worried about the homeless population and people sitting there, but on the flip side, people could not use the parks because, right? So, we want people to be able to sit in outdoor space, so there is that balance. So trying to create more welcoming and open public spaces like the parks helps create a more open community and healthy community. So. Parks plan.
They make people do development with parks, with benches, or with with less fences.
So the Parks is actually doing, it's called Parks Without Borders program. Yeah.
Well, your question is related to how can you use what is the Department of City Planning to advance what are age-friendly, programmatic street infrastructure, so that it's coming from the planning perspective as well, not just an afterthought.
Exactly.
And just to appreciate what you're saying, when we have our ULURP hearings, we are constantly pushing for what is a bench, trees for shade, bioswales. But one of the interesting factors is the fact that the senior centers, when you really evaluate what is just the front entrance, there's nowhere for seniors to sit if they're waiting for access a ride. Like, it's remarkable. And so now that they're coming for renewal of leases, we're pushing that out. But it would be helpful if coming from what would be a request from Borough Service Cabinet to you, back to the agency, to say, let's assess all our senior centers so that we can figure out who has and who does not, so that we can fill that gap. Because it's left up to the director to do it. And 9 times out of 10, they're not gonna find the time on the list of priorities as that being number 1.
I can take it back because actually the commissioner for Department for Aging sits on our commission, and they all do come to our working groups. And I know they have talked about accessibility of the actual senior center itself, but mentioning the bench piece, we should actually mention that because it may be worth them.
Low-hanging
It
fruit.
totally is because
if
there
you
is
have one-
funding for the benches, so why not add it? So,
Yes,
so it's
just
definitely.
a matter of logistical coordination and priority.
And they might be able to get that word out to all their center directors to say that put a request in. So I think usually it's not a problem to put it in. They just have to make sure it fits within the zoning of the, if there's space and all those things. Yeah.
I guess the last now.
Yeah.
So what happens when there's a conflict between agencies' priorities? And let me bring up 4th Avenue in my community, where DOT would like to put in a sheltered bike lane. What that would require is, in some areas, removing a portion of the median in 4th Avenue. So people right now cross 3 or 4 lanes to get to the median, and then if they need to take another bike cycle, they could then cross the rest. If they remove that, then people have to cross 6 lanes.
And they're not adding that other safety?
The other portion of that I wanted to bring up, 4th Avenue, my district, has a lot of sensitive sites for seniors. We have the public library, we have senior housing, we have senior centers, and public transportation. If we're putting in a sheltered bike lane, if somebody pulls up an accessoride, for example, they're going to be let out and have to cross a lane of traffic, the bike lane. That seems like a dangerous conflict to me. So what happens when there is a conflict between agencies?
So I will tell you, I'm not the expert on that from Age Friendly. I do sit on a community board, and I've had that discussion, like we've had that discussion about, you know, people have to use that space that they're going to be putting a bike lane, and I know it's a discussion to bring up. So I'm sorry I can't help you, but I hear you on that point. So it's actually worth actually bringing up to DOT, like what are you going to do? Because usually they do another cut that people can stand, but your point is that they're going to have to wait, probably in a space that doesn't have a bench, or try to cross quickly when
Well, they'll essentially have to cross in the middle of the street.
Yeah.
The lane that's being used.
Yeah. You know what? I will actually take that back and ask them to see that, because especially on areas where we know that there's a senior center or a lot of accessoride pickups, we should be able to figure out a way to accommodate around that, and we can ask. Yeah. Oops. And another program that we helped to pilot was with the Department for the Aging and the Department for Cultural Affairs was the Sukasa program, which actually gives an artist a residency within a senior center. It started as I think 20, what did we say, 12 residencies with no funding, and now it's at $2 million program with 150 residency, and I heard this next year is like a $2.4, $2.5 million program, and it means that every community district last year had 3 different artists in residency at senior centers and other places, but what was really exciting about the program as the Department for Cultural Affairs stopped thinking of arts programming for older adults as, oh, we're going to for older adults. They actually started thinking more expansively and thinking more from an equity position that, you know, we need to be able to provide programming for all different people at different ages because it's an equity issue. So if older adults don't have access to arts programming, then we should do that. And so I know many of you have heard about the new cultural plan. If you look at it, there is sort of some actually specific, you know, mention of older adults and equity of access to cultural programming throughout the city. So, which to us is really the exciting piece of it. It's not about creating that separate or equal situation, but really thinking about how are we keeping people engaged. And then a lot of older adults, like we've talked about, just like everybody else wants to stay in the neighborhoods that they live in, they want to think about how that community is developing. We've worked on these aging improvement districts, sort of looking at the neighborhood level. Much of it was funded by city council members. I brought some examples of these. These were surveys that we did with the seniors and stakeholders, and as well as any sort of community agency that was deemed like that would be able to come together in sort of focus groups to talk to us, and we use that to create a report and sort of an action plan. So I've got 2 of them. We'll send this way. Sorry. If you open it up, you can see what the plan is, short-term, medium-term, long-term projects that we had for each of these communities, as well as a little bit of background. I will say many of these action plans, you know, we made the plan, but really haven't progressed towards actually completing the plan. So you'll see sort of what, you know, we'd like to do. And one of the pieces, as I talked to you about Age-Friendly Brooklyn, is going to be really engaging some of the older adults and you as community planners. How do we continue on and get some of those plans done? I'll give you all a second to read that. I'm going to take a sip of water.
No, you could pass it down this way. Oh, no, that's the Carlos Menchaca?
Yeah, yeah. Are we finished?
That came this way? Okay, okay.
And these are all available online. There's actually a agefriendlyneighborhoods.org. I think it might be a link on there that you can actually see all the different ones, because we have actually action plans by council district, but we've done work in community districts 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 10, 13, and 16 by those districts. So some of your districts have
Those are council districts or community
districts and council districts.
And that's in Brooklyn?
Brooklyn, yeah.
So can you repeat them again?
Yeah, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 10, 13, and 16. We were funded by council districts, so it was council districts 36.
That's half.
Yeah. 48, 41, 35, and 38. And you know, some of them have, you know, really blossomed into these amazing age-friendly communities that are really engaged with older adults that are really doing some amazing work, and some have really stalled. And I think where I will speak to you a little bit, we're actually thinking of age-friendly Brooklyn, and we're very excited that the borough president has really excited to have Brooklyn be the first age-friendly borough. So, you know, we worked at the city level, and then we worked at the neighborhood level, and we are taking it to that borough level, looking to really expand and sort of maximize connections between the community. Let me talk to you a little bit about what that means. So we're looking for a regular mechanism of feedback from older adults, because we want to use what older adults tell us is important to them and what's impacting them to guide what the work we do, to really be that piece of it rather than us just doing it based on research and what we think is best. The other piece is to encourage more opportunities for participation and better information. And so and what we are very, very excited about is that on October 4th, the borough president will be announcing the Age-Friendly Brooklyn initiative, so you are hearing it before everybody else does. But his announcement will include a new healthy aging fund that's coming out of the academy, but our awardees this year are all from Brooklyn, as well as an older adult survey that we'll be doing annually in Brooklyn. That survey will be done, we have a survey that we use for these action plans, but I was talking to Sandra Chapman yesterday and some other people from the office, and they're looking to set up a task force of experts to tweak that survey to give you some more sort of Brooklyn-specific data from that survey. So that would be maybe helpful to your community districts to utilize for your need statements and budget requests. And they're looking at then engaging older adult ambassadors who are going to do the outreach to actually get that sort of the word out that the survey is happening and get people to actually take the survey. So what I'd love to ask for you guys is to keep an eye out on that and help us think about who should be, what organizations should be getting those surveys so that they can make sure the older adults in the community actually get that.
So can I just ask you to share what is an example of a survey question?
Sure. So the questions go through those 8 domains of World Health Organization, so transportation, housing, and so those type of questions will sort of relate to those 8 domains. So the survey that we have is actually quite simple. It's 2 pages. So it'll be like, you know, tell us about how, do you feel that you are able to get where you need to go, and is transportation easily accessible? So it's a very like simple, more open question. What we have done for some of these neighborhood surveys are done focus groups where people can actually tell us more detail, like why is it that there's a problem? Is there an intersection of problems? So, and I think that's why the survey is going to be tweaked a little bit for Brooklyn to give more detailed info.
So CB10 has sat on an age-friendly committee for the last 3 years,
Mm-hmm.
and I have to say it's probably one of the most eye-opening experience that I've had as a district manager in terms of planning. We had several focus groups with seniors from different parts of the district, and I was surprised at some of the needs they raised at the focus groups. We also did the surveys, we participated. From that, we learned, and I spoke about it the last, I think at budget consultations, a lot of our seniors were very intimidated technologically wise, and they felt they didn't have anywhere to turn to get tech help, whether they didn't have grandchildren or young people around. And so we had a tech fair, a senior tech event, which was incredible. It was like 300 people. We also learned that, we like, a lot of seniors do like to go to parks, but in terms of planning, there are not many restrooms available. And we have one of the biggest promenades, and it's a beauty part of our district, the Shore Road Promenade, and we don't have a restroom. And we've applied and asked, and they said, we'd love to go, but many of them just couldn't. So there was a lot that we learned in terms of planning and advocating on our district needs statement. And I think it's a great vision. I'm happy that the BP is on this. I'd like to, be more active and share what we learned as a district, and we've also had surveys and we created questions, and it's ongoing. I have a meeting next week, so we continue to meet as a board, and we've done tremendous outreach with every senior organization in our district, and it has made, we have a lot of new city benches, we have done a lot of work, so it is a great vision, and I think the surveys are extremely helpful and eye-opening, because things that I may not see as a manager, I've heard from seniors in the district. It's a lot of work, and it takes a lot of organizing and energies, but having a partnership with your senior community and business, which is what we've done, we've looked at restaurant discounts and other things that we've heard from our seniors, so.
And Josephine, just to give you, almost to close the loop, right? Because the comment you made about there not being a restroom, right?
Yeah.
When there should be in a public park, right? And that is a identified capital need come this December when we launch what would be the capital application submission, so that is one of the priorities that has to translate over to the capital process, so that you're submitting to Borough President Adams, you're submitting to the local council members, and then together, hoping that this comment translates over to what would be the task force analyzing all of this, that it's not just on paper, but that it's activated, right? Because it's not one entity, and as much as it's said, the question is it being supported with an application, right? Because there is a process behind it. And so we would appreciate that application come this fiscal year, so that we can get it actually funded to be constructed. That's excellent work.
Yeah. And I would add that survey, we are planning an annual spring summit to disseminate the survey report to older adults and to other providers and agencies, but we are planning for and hoping for that survey to be utilized for your district needs and capital budget requests, because, it is going to highlight, and I think one of the most interesting things to me, I've only been with Age Friendly a year and a half, is that there's very easy tweaks. The fact that you didn't know that the bathroom was a reason why older adults didn't go there, or if it's just because people didn't have a place to sit, you can do those changes very easily. We did some work in East Harlem with older adults about using the public pools, and they said that they love swimming in the summer, but kids are really rowdy, so they avoid the pool. So East Harlem piloted a senior swim time, which has been replicated throughout the city, and they love it. So it's an hour that is dedicated, once a week or sometimes twice a week for older adults to use, and it did not cost any money, and it was just a simple change in the way the service was provided, but it made it more accessible, and people were swimming more, and they were able to participate. And I will tell you an anecdote. When I did speak to parks, I spoke to the borough directors, and I actually talked to them about why activity is important and sort of the diversity component, and why the work that they do is important, but also, how to make things more age-friendly, which is, the two big things is actually being able to get to a bathroom and being able to sit down. But when I talked about the senior swim, one of the borough directors said that sometimes the site manager is a little bit more, hesitant to do a senior swim time, or just doesn't feel like it'll fit in, and so she wants to use that material to sort of encourage them. But it would be great for you as district managers and community boards to say, hey, I noticed that you don't have a swim time, a dedicated swim time to your pools. Maybe, I know we have older adults in your community who might benefit. Maybe there's a way. So it could come from both directions. So
but
that
Asia, just to stay on that point, right? Do we even have an inventory of where those swim programs are?
We do know where the swims.
And can you share that with us?
Yes.
Where they are not?
Yes.
Because
where
the McCarran pool, right?
Yes.
That we just opened. I worked my, what? Off in my entire career to get that there, right? And it doesn't have a senior program. it's a problem,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And I think there was like only 25, and it usually was the center itself, the center director, who seemed to decide if it was doable or not. So it's kind of nice to kind of add that sort of, encourage it, because we know Brooklyn has so many older adults. We should be able to access it. And, most older adults want to do want to be in age-neutral spaces, but there are some things that they want, things that are dedicated to.
So we want to see the information where it's dissected into who has it and who does not.
Okay, I can get that
Because
from parks,
the highlighting of where it's not is where we need to be advocates.
Yeah.
Because it's
Yes,
not,
yeah.
and a lot of what you're saying, it's almost like everyone has said it, and it goes unnoticed or unchecked because it's set into the universe and somebody has to catch it.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
That's what happens in government all the time, and it's what we're trying to change. And so that's why a lot of these things don't get done, because no one's actually bothering to catch it to actually get it done. And so I want to understand your role in making sure that these things are getting done because you're catching them, or who is that face that's catching them for the oversight?
We can help you capture the information so we can let you know, because it'll come, I will tell you from you guys making the request as Brooklyn, it'll actually go over, we can make the request to do more senior swim programs, but your neighborhoods and communities. You know where the pool should have a senior swim time more than I do.
They may not.
Yeah.
They may not, I'm sorry.
But
That's
not more so
true.
than me sitting in East Harlem, I will tell you that. But saying you could make a push like in Brooklyn that we want to be able to trial a senior swim in every single swimming pool next summer. You could do that. Whatever feels right to you as Brooklyn, I think that could be that decision. We can find out for you where they are.
Right,
I can get you
appreciate that, but equity is not built on how we feel,
Yeah.
all right?
Yeah.
Just want to make sure we understand that, yes.
How can we compel the MTA to get involved?
Yes.
The accessibility.
Is Andy
it's a
here?
big
Andy left?
Andy left.
Yeah.
I had a new train station open last week on a block with the senior center, with senior housing, and one block over from other senior housing. No bathroom, no elevator, but it does have cell phone charging stations.
We have Wi-Fi, the whole thing is Wi-Fi now, but then that ADA compliant, our trains.
I'm gonna grab my
Take this one here. You got it? Okay. So we will make a note of this. It's hard for us to engage the MTA, immediately, but I think listening to this program and coordinating with ASIA to be able to understand what MTA's responses will be, and if that could be the official request back to the age-friendly program, so that the MTA is incorporated into this, that would be very helpful. And then we can certainly follow up with you to understand the status of that.
That'd be great. No, I'll definitely work with you guys on that. So let me,
There was another
let me
hand,
add
I'm
one more
sorry.
thing. Let me add one more thing for the announcement from the Borough President on October 2nd. So we'll be doing the survey, we'll be doing a summit in the spring. Not only will it tell the report of the survey, but we're hoping to have sort of senior service providers or other providers that want to do work with older adults to be there to kind of engage the community. And finally, we're going to plan on having May as an age-friendly business month. We actually have spoken to the Brooklyn Chamber of Commerce. They are incredibly excited of engaging with older adults. They're actually doing a summit next week that is looking at engaging the older adult customer. My director is speaking there, but they're really excited to do some more programming. And so we're hoping to do promotion, so we'd love to have you encourage many of your chambers as well as bids to think about doing programming, special programming and or discounts for older adults in May. But what we also do, and we're happy to come by, is if you do have relationships with bids, we do a program on how to make your business age-friendly through sort of low-cost or no-cost measures. So I'm going to send these around for you. And we've done some of those obviously in your district, and we did that, I think, we've gone around, and happy to do any of those whenever you'd like, because, a lot of it's really getting our message out to different communities and them taking it on and using it the way that it works best for them.
Was that the last slide?
No, one more,
Okay.
I'll try to go through quickly. So this is what, we kind of went on to some of this already, is that, you know, when we do, the survey does come out, please do let other people know. I will mention, so I mentioned that I'm in Manhattan Community Board 6, I chair health and education. So we did a survey, it's been taking a long time. At that time, I thought just doing a survey on what programs you want would be enough, but in the comments, everybody told me transportation issues, they told me housing issues, they told me, and so the point that I realized is that we do need to have a bigger survey because these things are impacting people and we need to ask them because, you know, as a community board person, I am a volunteer and we have limited ability to get the information, but I really need to ask my community of people and not just rely on the people I know to let me know what their needs are. So, so please help get the word out to as many diverse people we can, older adults, to get that information.
And Asia, is that survey result going to be part of the open data?
I don't know about that.
Let me turn that around and say, I'd like to request for the results of the survey to be part of
Yeah, we
open
can ask,
data,
yeah,
because part of the issue is that no one knows where to get this
Yeah.
information, and open data is supposed to be the platform where this information is going to be real-time and accessible.
Are you saying that also that community data, the community portal, there is a portal that the city has that you can go by community district to get data? You're thinking of putting it in there?
I think that's separate.
Would that be, yeah, this would be separate? Yeah, I mean, we can come back because we're working with your office. So whatever you feel would be the best way to get that information to everyone.
Is DO-IT sitting on this particular age-friendly program discussion?
Not in Brooklyn, not yet, but the task force is going to be put together. So if you think that they would be a good part of that task force, we can make that suggestion.
They should be, because they are the manager of the city of New York for information.
Great. And then I touched upon this in all my other discussions. When you're doing your need statements, when you're doing your budget requests, think about all the different areas that older adults use. Include them not just in the DFTA portion. So, for example, you know, we have there's a district up in Washington Heights that knew that they didn't have enough senior centers, but they wanted to get more programming. So, you know, those requests can be at ask libraries, ask parks to do more programming for your older adults. I know in my district we have a very high falls ratio. There is falls programming that can be offered at rec centers and libraries. Ask for that. So if you know things about your community through some of the Department of Health sort of information, if you have, whatever it is, just think about it, but think about asking it in different areas. Do you have another question?
No. I think you had a question, right?
A question and a comment. So Councilman Carnegie is a big advocate for age-friendly. And we do have the Cape Pool senior swim team that competes, and they're really good. So that's a good program. But in terms of the benches, I forgot the name of the team, but they compete and they're very good. But in terms of the benches, we have a problem in our district, especially along Fulton Street. And just this week, I was walking down Fulton Street, and we've had a problem where the homeless people occupy the benches a lot. And on Monday, I saw this guy, he was selling his DVDs. He sat on this end of the bench, and then he spread out all his DVDs along the bench. So it's not being utilized by the people who it was proposed to be using it, and I wanted to know if there's something set in place to ensure that the seniors and a mother with a baby carriage, are able to utilize it more than just the wrong type of people.
No, I hear you. Do you think your precinct could actually?
Well, they've been kind of hesitant in doing it because they don't want to literally just chase the homeless, because there's really no place for them to go.
Because they just move somewhere else, right?
They just move somewhere else. And so part of what we've done is request benches, but then we had to turn around and ask DOT to remove the benches.
Because they were being used by homeless.
Yes. So that's the issue we're having in our district. So we have to kind of come up with some kind of solution on how to go about that, where the seniors can actually
utilize it.
No, I hear you, and I think I've heard that in some places too. Did you have?
Yeah, just to piggyback on that a bit, I wonder if with the street outreach, because we've been reaching out through 311 to DHS for street outreach increasingly, and I wonder if part of the street outreach effort is not necessarily to go after it as strictly a homeless intervention, but if perhaps, because a lot of people refuse those services, but perhaps if there's a senior service that they might take advantage of, and that could be a gateway into additional services, if there's any, so I guess my question is there any coordination with street outreach specifically for street homeless seniors?
I don't think so, but I will tell you the fastest rising population of homeless is older adults. Yes, they are our fastest rising population there. So you know, that's actually something worth asking if there's more coordination between Department of Housing Services and DFTA from homeless there might be a space for them to talk.
Yeah, no, Laura, go ahead.
Not about the homeless, but we have a great program at Kingsborough Community College. Brooklyn College has it. It's a senior going back to school, a turn-back program. That's a great resource for seniors, for socialization. I don't think they're promoted enough. I wasn't aware of it until I was at Kingsborough. It existed, the My Turn program.
I refer a lot of people in our district to that program, yeah.
Absolutely. And I think more colleges should be encouraged throughout the city, especially in Brooklyn, to have this program.
So the age-friendly initiative under Bloomberg was part of an age-friendly colleges and universities, which did encourage people. There is a website, but it hasn't been updated. But there is a push, and I think whenever we do ask any of the other universities and colleges about programming for older adults, they are very willing to offer discounted access, or if not free. So
It needs to be more, I guess, advertised or more put out in the community, so they don't have to travel so far, that it's in their own communities where colleges exist.
So I agree, and I don't know if all of you do newsletters. One of the things I will mention later, but I'll say it here, is that, you know, just think about relevant information. You know, May is Older American Month. If there's activities that could actually, you know, help older adults advertise those things, mention them in whatever spaces you can. Use the libraries to talk about it too, because the libraries, especially in Brooklyn, are just amazing. They're doing such wonderful, wonderful work. Let me just click over there, and I think some of you are very aware of this, the Bed-Stuy, we were actually in Bed-Stuy showing it off to Columbus, Ohio a couple of weeks ago, because they're doing, Columbus is doing an age-friendly initiative, and Bed-Stuy is just amazing. And I remember at the library, they have an interlibrary online bowling league, which, competitive, which is just blows my mind, and it's only older adults. So, I mean, your libraries are a great resource. They're doing wonderful work. If you think that they, you know, if you're seeing a need in other areas, encourage them to do more work, especially for our older adult population. And we actually worked with the American Institute for Architects and the Department for the Aging on creating an aging in place guide for building owners, as well as an East Harlem neighborhood plan. All of this is available online, and I can send you links for that. The aging in place guide for building owners actually talks about what things you should do for people to retrofit. So to your point about ULURP and encouraging design, when zoning and development programs come in front of you, especially when you know that you're going to have a lot of people who will potentially age in place, we need to create spaces that people can live in when they're 40 and when they're 90, right? Because people don't want to move, and they can't afford to move if they're in a rent-controlled space. So we want places that they can actually grow into. So think about that. The small business guide I spoke about. And I also talked to you a little bit about making sure that you advertise the information that you need to that's relevant to older adults. Make sure that you do use 12-point font or higher, and Calibri and Helvetica is the easiest to read. And we have these guides. We also have some other information I'm happy to share with you on our website. So you're welcome to reach out to me and ask me, and I can get you some more information to share with your communities. And I think I'm going to send my card around to you. And I think that's really it. Okay.
I just wanted to bring up something about housing, because one of the concerns I've heard from seniors in my district, we're creating some affordable housing set-asides for seniors. But I've heard from two people who are concerned that since they are raising their grandchildren, they might not be eligible for those apartments because they have a young person there. Is there anything definitional?
So I'm going to double check that, because we actually had the Department for Housing, not housing, but it was I'm sorry, I'm blanking on the word, but the people that do the online, the Department for, Connect, Housing Connect, came, the marketing piece for, they came to speak to actually the age-friendly working group on housing. And the point they made, as long as I think someone who is 65 and older is living in the apartment, they are eligible for that set aside. And one interesting piece, because Housing Connect is online and we know a lot of older adults are not able to get online, you can do a paper form, which you can request, or you can have somebody called a housing ambassador, which is a community organization that works with enough older adults that will help older people work through the process and apply. And they are spread out through the city. There are more, but it is online to find if your community needs it, so you should know where yours are if you think that people need to know so. But older adults can apply for these affordable housing lotteries, and what they're finding, because now they're doing it all online, those set-asides for older adults or disability or veterans are actually getting met, because before, when they had the paper process, they wouldn't even meet their set-asides. So the good thing, I mean, it is harder, but in other places, they're kind of working out sort of workarounds. So, but I think that I'm pretty sure that that's what they said, as long as there's an individual who is over 65, so, yeah.
How many of the 66,000 homeless, how many are 65 and older?
15%.
15%.
Yeah.
And of the 15%, how much set aside is there in the affordable housing world for age-friendly?
So the mayor's the mayor's initiative has 200,000 units. Only 15,000 are for older adults.
And is that meeting the demand for the 15% in what would be the homeless system?
No, and I think, and we know that there are 200,000 older adults who are just waiting for affordable housing too. They're not in affordable housing units and they're waiting to get into one.
How many?
200,000. So it's not meeting the need.
So we're in the red.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that, you know, our biggest concern, like SCREE and programs like that, do help, but a lot, what we do find is a lot of people are not unaware of SCREE. And when they do become aware of SCREE, it's so far down the line that it's already really expensive for them. So, you know, getting the word out about these programs that can help them are important. And those are the things that, you know, the more engagement we do with older adults. And I think my concern too with the diversity that we have, there are many communities where people just don't have language access or cultural access and don't even think that the government would be providing this kind of service, so they don't know to ask those questions or to go.
When I was a council member in Greenpoint, Williamsburg, our #1 homeless population was growing amongst age 65 and older. And what they ended up doing was renting rooms, right? And so that's not even represented in the numbers of homeless, it's just overcrowded. In addition to that, they won't qualify for SCREE because they're not head of household.
Because they're renting
And
rooms.
so it's a perpetual, so the 200,000 number plus the 15% in the homeless shelter is even greater because of the doubled up situation.
Yeah.
And so I just wanted to share how, you know, I don't know how much coordination under age-friendly there is for increasing the set-aside in the affordable housing number of units for seniors age 65 and older, because it's not as if the units that are amongst what would be the affordable housing world is dedicated for seniors, because they fall under the 30% of income.
Yeah.
And nothing out there is dedicated to that.
No. Yeah, no, I hear you. I hear you. It's a really tough situation. I will tell you, the mayor has some new commitments on housing. The increasing the number of housing options is not in there, but my working group is meeting at the end of November to talk about the commitments, to really kind of think about ways we can sort of really push, because some of the commitments, you know, are things that are happening or very well easily will happen, but some are sort of vague. Yes, we should do this. Now the question is, should we? How are we going to do that? And we're hoping through the Brooklyn Age Friendly Initiative is to really engage some older adults too, to really civically engage them, to really be on the street and understand how to advocate advocate for themselves. And one piece of that is really helping them sort of bring that to so it's sort of us also encouraging as, agencies and other CBOs and other nonprofits that are there, but also people on the ground. So I think, it is worrisome. And I think, what to me always, because of the poverty level in the older adults, like 1/3 are near poverty or at poverty, many of them just don't have the capacity to do some of that advocacy on their own. So getting to hear their voices and understanding what the needs are is really important, getting that, shared.
Yes.
At one time, wasn't there a share program, like apartment share, that they were matching people?
Yeah.
I don't even know if that exists anymore.
It does,
They
it
did
does.
at one time.
Yeah, the New York Foundation for Senior Citizens actually has this home share program. It's actually really well done. They have a bunch of questions and they've had very great success. It helps offset people's costs. And it is usually an older person who has a space that they share out a room, often with people who are students. But they said that they've had people who've had like 20-year roommates who've been, developmentally delayed, but very like nice people that they've just had an extra space. So that has helped offset the cost. But I think what you're talking about is even more share than that. All right. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, I'm reading everything here,
Yeah.
and it's basically centered around seniors that are mobile. What about those who are shut-ins, immobile, mentally incapable of taking care of themselves? What type of programs are you looking at that sector?
We are. So to think about it from age-friendly lens, we're looking at all older adults and increasing access. So it's the idea that even, adding, thinking about how the community is preparing for that. So if there is a population of a portion of your population that is dementia or is homebound, thinking about what those needs are. So is that, Meals on Wheels? Is it access to groceries? Those type of programming and being able to increase the access. But, I think it's not sort of like we're not a senior center like a service provider, but we're more about the thinking and city planning about what those needs are. So one thing to tell you about is that we're working on an interactive map of aging in New York City. I think it's supposed to be done by December 31st, but we will be sharing it. And that will actually let you project 30 years into the future where people are going to age into, but also let you look at what buildings are there, how accessible they are, how many. So I'm going to be there too. But from that lens to think about the fact that, we know we have a bunch of housing where there are a lot of older adults and it doesn't have an elevator. And what are we going to start thinking about and how are we going to think about that? So I think it's from that perspective. But I hear your point because dementia is an issue. Caregiver assistance is an issue. It's sort of looking at the overall picture and what can we keep sort of increasing. And I think, the library and rec centers have programs for caregivers, and a lot of these arts programming are, targeted to older adults, but it allows a caregiver to have a respite too. So thinking sort of what do we have available to us and how can we use that creatively?
And is there, I'm sorry, please.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if we did outreach to our North communities,
Mm-hmm.
engage them and pull them into the conversation.
Yes, and we work a lot with United Neighborhood Houses too, and a lot of some of them sit on our commission or on our working groups, so they're part of this work. But I do think that when we're in Brooklyn, we would love to really do that engagement because it's sort of getting the word out and getting them engaged in this idea and helping them advocate from some of those changes is helpful because the people that are working in the community know what the community needs are. They hear it, they see it. So using that data and using that sort of to help decide what we're going to do and what we're going to plan is really important. Thanks.
Asia, as far as the nursing homes are concerned, just to take Brooklyn's landscape and the opportunities to understand how do you create a transitional living situation where you go from independent living to perhaps assisted living to then perhaps nursing home living, but it's all under one roof.
Yeah.
Right? And the emphasis is not just nursing home or just independent or just assisted. And looking at what would be perhaps air rights or footprint of expansion so that there's an opportunity here for the city to incorporate transitional age-friendly housing needs and medical needs.
Yeah. So I think the shift really is to not have people move out of the communities and the homes that they lived in, as like to really delay that as far as possible. And the idea is to keep them in the homes that they're in, keep them active, both physically and socially.
I get it, but just
So I
to
hear
keep-
you,
just
but
to
like.
make sure that you understand, again, I'm going to go back to my district.
Yeah,
Greenpoint,
yeah.
Williamsburg, 260 Power Street is a 202 senior housing built back.
Yeah, which
in
they're
the
no more being
80s,
built,
late-
right? Like I know,
correct.
right.
But there's many of them throughout Brooklyn.
Yeah.
And what if there was an opportunity to create assisted living, which is what they've done, just
Yeah.
to set aside of assisted living, because the needs have formed into assisted living
Yeah.
needs. And then the third is getting a nursing home concept,
Yeah.
not to dominate the footprint, but incorporating it because that's the last need that
So-
you may need.
So what's really interesting, now I remembered it, it was HPD's marketing people that came. HPD is actually looking at the design for the senior SARA program, so the Senior Affordable Housing Program. And what they're looking to do is create this community space that could be utilized for programming and activities, with the idea that people are going to be living in these spaces and are going to need assistance and using, so that they can get a senior service provider connected to it. And what we heard from the DFTA Assistant Commissioner is that they're actually rethinking some of these SARA units, if there's space to put, to move a close by senior center that's unaccessible, that doesn't have, you know, a wheelchair accessibility, to actually shift and maybe in that new building, put the senior center as well as the new housing to do that type of creative rethinking, so that they can provide more services. People are sort of there and they can be utilized. So the nursing piece, nursing home piece, I don't really know much about. I will tell you.
Don't focus on nursing home. The thing is, I think about Menorah Nursing Home.
Yeah.
Closed, moved out.
Yeah.
But then the property was not taken advantage of, and it was purchased by private development.
So it didn't even help older adults, right?
No,
yeah.
not
yeah.
at all.
Yeah.
Right? So
And
it's a net loss twice.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so.
And
we
those
think
older
about-
adults who are there now don't live in that community that probably was near their family who could come visit them frequently,
Correct.
right? So
And that's
like,
in Bushwick.
yeah.
And so how do you then plan around dealing with preserving what would be an age-friendly institution rather, to incorporate what would be new needs or existing needs or collaborative combination of?
So my suggestion is, because I don't know that specific one, so if the nursing home was not able to stay financially solvent, but the space was there, it may have gotten some sort of tax abatement or some sort of benefit for being like a community benefit provider of some sort. Maybe within the ULURP and the development negotiation, really pushing to say that, you know, the serviced older adults, the serviced our community, can you set aside a certain percentage of affordable housing unit? So not forcing them to stay a nursing home if that's not really working, but really seeing like if there is another need and pushing that piece, I think. But I will say to you, like, you know, I think what's happening with the aging population and housing is just something that's really big concern across the U.S. and especially in New York City, because our buildings are not accessible. They're not made for people to age in place. And the way the affordability, like your rent control, cannot move to another space. We have people who actually told us they work for Enterprise Community Partners, and they have the landlord who's really amenable, and when they have an older adult who lives in a place that's on like the 3rd floor, she'd love to move to the ground floor because it's just easier to get in and out, and it would be an accessible apartment, but her rent control is tied to the apartment, and there's no way to get around that. And even if the landlord's amenable, the way the regulation's written, so we have, you know, people like, so there's things within the way that the infrastructure's happened that has created these situations. And you know, we are thinking about Mitchell-Lamas too, because people have told us that they want to even move within their Mitchell-Lama, and because of the way the Mitchell-Lama, you can't even downsize in a Mitchell-Lama because it's more expensive to downsize, and you know, like it's there, the infrastructure has become really complicated. So it is a complex thing, but I will actually, I think, you know, it's one thing to think about. I think one of the big things we really want is, since I sit on a community board, I know we do have developers come across us, so I really think that, you know, that when the community does advocate and say that, you know, instead of just saying we want a nursing home, but we know that we need affordable housing, and really pushes and understands what those needs are and thinks about all the different types of set-asides they could do, they can try to be successful, and hopefully with political support, I would think, so, yeah.
Well, we appreciate
No
the
problem.
presentation.
Thank you.
I know that everyone is dying down.
Sorry, I know, I'm sorry.
You have a question? Sure.
Oh, thanks, sure. Oh, great, so you'll take some of those other.
I'm exhausted, but it's been a great meeting. Thursday, October 19th is the annual public hearing in Brooklyn at the Ridgewood Bushwick Senior Center. It's Diana Jones, actually, Ridgewood Bushwick Diana Jones, Senior Center, 9 Knoll Street. It's an opportunity for the district managers who have had questions to come out and to present these types of issues to our executive staff, comment on the annual plan summary, which will eventually come out and will be online. But these types of thoughts and considerations should definitely be noted for the state office for aging. You know, we get our funding and our lead through the state office for aging. So just consider that. Consider coming, consider sending seniors, and just share the information. I'll definitely remind you all. But also about the senior swim portion. Living in Coney Island, if I may say, the biggest pool in Brooklyn is the beach.
Yeah.
So if we could consider even senior swim hours, that just might be another great opportunity for that to come out and not necessarily have to make some other, but you know, other age groups, I think, just might have time to themselves.
Yeah.
So,
That's an interesting, I mean, that's a great,
we're the
great.
Parks Department, so let's think big.
Yeah.
Right, Ed?
Yes.
Okay, so that's all I have to say.
Thank you so much. And I will add, New York State is going to be the first age-friendly state. The governor actually announced that in his State of the Union in January. So we're working to push it from a state perspective. So it might be a great opportunity to push for funding from the Department for the Aging. And so.
That's good. Thank you very much, Elsie.
I'll be speaking to all your board chairs in November. So if there's anything you think that I should emphasize, please let me know.
Excellent. So I want to just thank everyone. We just have the new representative of Customer Relations Coordinator, Office of the Brooklyn Postmaster, John Venable. Venable, fantastic. John, if you could come up here, because we've been eager to see the new face. And part of what I want to just emphasize is a lot of complaints coming in regarding USPS Postal Service on a personal and professional level. I don't know what's happening in USPS, that there's mail from Coney Island coming to Bushwick, or a business not receiving their mail for 3 consecutive days on a weekly basis, or a community board. I want to make sure that the postmaster understands that there is a serious service delivery issue that is ever so quickly getting worse. It's not good, and I'm not trying to gloss this over. And so I would like for there to be a communication back to the postmaster, for there to be an internal meeting as to how they're going to assess where these issues are percolating from. I don't know how often on a weekly basis are branches met with managers? Daily. Well, it's not working. So perhaps the postmaster meeting with employees directly per branch is going to be necessary, because I was tolerant and now I'm not. And I can't spend with the same business calling the postmaster's office to deal with the same issue on a weekly basis, and I'm not even the business. I have other important matters to deal with for Brooklyn other than mail delivery. And on a personal note, I'm seeing the mess of delivery of, it's almost like no one cares, which is really heightened. So I just wanted to share that. I don't know if there's specific. Yes. Fantastic. Let's start over here. John, I don't mean to, dash at you right away, but this is an outstanding matter, and we were sensitive to the fact that your predecessor was retiring. There was.
Actually retired, he relocated to headquarters.
Got it. So that promotion better work for us. So we want to make sure that this is conveyed urgently with very swift results. And I want to understand what that plan is, that master plan to fix this problem once and for all. Whether that's more personnel, extended hours, new postal zip codes, I don't know. What I want to know is all those and then some, because I'm not the postmaster, so I can certainly act like I am by giving suggestions, but I need the collaboration of the postmaster's office. Yes.
Vanderveer, Farragut, and Rugby. A matter of fact, I addressed an issue, what's today, Wednesday? Monday. There was a major complaint that came into the board's office. And
Which station?
Monday.
Okay.
That's North Stream Avenue. This has been an ongoing issue in our community. I personally experienced it. My mails were delivered to my neighbors. My neighbors' mails was delivered to my home. And I actually unpaid postal service.
Yeah.
Because I have to go and knock on the doors
Right.
of my neighbors and deliver their mails when I get into the evening. So please look into this ongoing issue for the past several years, especially Farragut and Vanderveer.
Yes. And then,
The Homecrest Avenue Post Office on Avenue U, I have a business that receives, I guess, checks, real estate company. And for 3 or 4 days in a row, they won't get their mail. Their mail is delivered after 5 o'clock. They don't have a lockbox, so the mail is just taken back, and then it disappears for a few days until they kind of sort out where it is. So the suggestion they were given was either to buy a lockbox to put it outside the business, which they don't feel comfortable doing, or taking a post office box inside the mailbox room. And I was told that they're understaffed. That's the problem. That's why they can't get the mail to them before 5 o'clock when their business closes. So obviously there's a staffing issue going on. That's what they're telling us.
do you need to write this down, John? Because
wondered
I
if
don't
we
want to
might wanna
bombard.
do this at a separate meeting, because I bet you if we go around the table.
Well, that part of the problem here is that I have requested a separate meeting, and it has not happened. That's why I'm frustrated, and right now is the moment to express this frustration beyond just requesting a meeting, because we've attempted to schedule, and it has not happened.
Diana, let me add, when we
Yeah,
requested, when we requested in May for the Postmaster General to be present and give us a presentation about service delivery,
In June, I agree.
in May. And the answer was that to give them a written complaint about what was going on, specifically by community board, and we only received one from community board 14. And I expressed that
I'm
to
not
John
gonna do-
before coming here, and that all the community district manager agree that there has a common issue between all.
Because I do know they have a customer complaint form that I believe that Ron Don, who's prior to me, gave out. And so the only way we can actually really get those written concerns, we really need that type of feedback. Because I am fully aware that there are a lot of delivery issues, and those issues we're getting every day, and they are being addressed, like I stated. There's telecons daily with each area manager, with each manager of each post office, and I'm sorry for your frustration. And I see it, I hear it in your voice, and I know I'm a customer as well, and I have the same mail delivery issues too. So it's an ongoing issue, and it's being addressed. I will give you my direct phone number, so we can get the ball rolling on this. It's 718-348-3341.
I'm sorry, what's it good?
3341.
John Venerable?
Venerable, and it's spelled Venable. I have some cards, let me just pass them around.
Absolutely. And the company that I was referring to is in East New York. East New York, I'm looking at you, whether, thinking it's Melinda. The Waterworks annually has these issues. And I already reported it to the postmaster's office. And I'll send that over as well. But the complaints coming into you, or your office, your universe, seems to be in a very silo, complaint-driven model, as opposed to looking at a pattern of, right? I'm looking for a pattern of complaints, because complaints are being issued. It's not that they're not. And it's disappointing, because when we're trying to have a follow-up meeting, as was mentioned by Sean, with complaints from you guys, it doesn't happen because we're not getting what you have, which is part of the open data issues, right? Like, so I can't collect if it's not being provided. So I'm not going to try to do something that is not in effect working. But what I want to make sure is that the collection of complaints you already have, and let's review it together so that then we could find where are the hot spots. Because these are hot spots. I can't imagine that all of Brooklyn is treated like this. And it's equity. It's pure equity.
Yeah, I really don't know how much the postmaster is working with the community, and I do understand that he has an extremely busy schedule, but for the past 2 years, we have sent out, or more, we have sent out written requests to have him attend one of our general community board meetings because of the consistency of the complaints that we've been receiving over the past 4 to 5 years in our district. And I must say that he has never been very cooperative or even addressed our requests or responded to our requests. So it's something for us to think about, and I'm sitting here today and I'm hearing that the Borough President's office made that request also. So it's really an issue and something that we need to look into.
And what community board?
17. We're on the list.
Jeremy and then Celeste.
This one's personal. I get a lot of complaints from my constituents, but with the community board, our neighboring agency moved out last June to Manhattan. And all their mail started going to Manhattan. But my local post office started sending all of my mail to Manhattan. Some of this time-sensitive material. And then my former neighboring agency would throw it in a box, and 3 months later we'd get our mail from them. This was cleared up in April. It took us about 10 months to clear this up. Part of the problem was since last November, the about 3 dozen calls I've made to the Bush Terminal Station, every time I've called them, the phone has been busy. There's no voicemail that even tells you you've reached the post office. So when I called your predecessor, I was told, well, that's not the number to call. Call this number. Except I looked up the phone number for Bush Terminal on USPS's website. So your website has a phone number that just directs people to something that nobody's going to answer.
Did you connect it to the second number?
I'm sorry?
The second number they gave
Yeah,
you?
well, she ended up calling them and they called her.
So first I want to say I'm very glad that you're here. My name is Celeste. I am the district manager for Community Board 4, which covers Bushwick. So I would say probably for the last year, at the end of all of our meetings, right after our announcements conclude, there is always one person that brings up the Postal Service in the neighborhood. And that has been addressed before. I know that there was a meeting, and for a while things were improved. However, I think that some of the similar issues we're hearing here, in terms of delivery times being inconsistent, issues with personnel, just wrong addresses being delivered all across the neighborhood. And, I know that we have, zip codes that correlate to other neighborhoods. So we have 11207 in the neighborhood, which is East New York, technically. And we also have our post office on Broadway. And then further along, we have one that's technically Ridgewood, even though it's on the border on Wyckoff. And so I know that that's mail coming from all different places. And I think that going forward, instead of, as our deputy borough president said, having things happen in a silo, point by point, it's really imperative that we, address this as a system and as chronic issues that have been occurring across the borough.
And so we have the Shirley Chisholm post office, which is our #1 complaint point in terms of delivery, mail being delivered to the wrong addresses. It's being delivered 8, 9 o'clock at night. There's several issues, and I find that the manager is very unresponsive. Because when we get the complaint, we have her direct email, we email it to her, there's no acknowledgement as to her receiving our complaints or whether or not she's addressing it, I mean, there's nothing. And there's several, other issues that we have addressed before, but it's an ongoing issue with that station. And we've been told that it's, mainly because there's a lot of staffing issues. People are not obtaining bids for that station, or they're coming in and they're leaving right out because of situation that's going on, so.
But I just do want to say that staffing should never, ever be an issue when it comes down to mail delivery. I know that, and I know you all know that. And it is an issue, but it's not an excuse.
Right.
And that's what they're being addressed every day as far as discipline, to discipline those employees that are not coming in to bring them back. So it's an unfortunate situation, but it's current and we have to fix it. And we are well aware of that. But please use my email address, use my number. I will do my level best to get all these. I mean, it's a process, but we have to start somewhere. And I'm willing to, because like I said, I'm a customer too. I have plenty of complaints. I live in Metro Station 11206. And I have the same issues. I know the manager, I know the supervisors, and I have to complain. So it's an unfortunate situation, but we have to fix it. That's the fix.
And we're willing to work with you,
Yes.
right? So part of that collaboration requires, John, for you to perhaps visit each community board if you have to, right? Sit down, understand, and they shared information, right? Like, they may have complaints, but you may also have a list of complaints already in your system that creates patterns that you can certainly start identifying where to focus that attention. Because not everywhere may get, unless this is the worst system, and everywhere there's a problem, I can't imagine that that's the case, right? And so it's just a matter of collaboratively working on both sides' information, not just asking us, come and send us the complaints. I'm not interested in sending complaints. We've been sending complaints. The issue is making sure we're reviewing the complaints and actually understanding where the hot spots are.
I totally agree.
I appreciate that. So, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. I was wondering if I should come alone or should I
I think the best thing we did was come along.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Because you can have that internal discussion and, express the frustration very well. Beyond that, we just want the collaboration of USPS.
Sure thing.
And we welcome you to come every month.
Okay.
I hope this is not just one-time visit. And so, with that in mind, thank you very much. Is there anything else for USPS? Okay. So, do you have one lonely soul? My Do you have any announcements?
No, not really. David and I spent on the buildings. Just, of course, just continue as you always do to contact me with any issues. Call in 301 first to get it into the system, and I'll be happy to work with all of you as we do. And my colleague Ben Colombo for the other community boards that he works.
I call you when he's not around. I call you when he's not around.
David, are you going to be with the mayor tomorrow?
Yes, I am.
Oh, yes.
Good times.
All right, so.
Looking forward.
So we will end with what would be this segment. I really appreciate that you didn't rush out. We just wanted to make sure that you have as much information as possible. And I hope that the presentations today gave you a flavor of how the tables need to turn a little when we're doing borough consultations. This isn't about asking the agencies, how can we help you? Because I noticed, where do you need support, I think was one of the questions that I heard, as far as agency needs, right? There's this big effort to be able to percolate information from the bottom up as far as needs are concerned. So your infrastructure, comfort house need on the park to get seniors to go is an infrastructure need, right? We want that type of information to the agencies. And we had submitted what would be the Google Doc form to pick top 3 agency or top 3 issues. We were trying to do that whole exercise before borough consultations, but people were a little leery of why do we need to do this when we already do what would be the I guess the borough consultations, which leads to district needs, right? But what I've noticed in review of the district needs in what would be this capacity and my previous capacity is that it's not saying exactly, like, refining where the needs are.
The budget request doesn't align the needs.
The budget request is not aligned with the needs. And so if there is a budget request at all, right? And so we're trying to extract that information from you, and we thought perhaps that this particular Google Doc form would help us achieve that. So, you know, we have Friday, right?
Yes.
Friday, this Friday, we have the next series of borough consultation meetings. You know, I'm not too sure what else in the short period between now and Friday, as far as those agencies are concerned, what could you see that our district needs funding that you can align to needs as opposed to reacting to the agency and asking them, what do you need?
We only do that at the end of the last question. All of the other questions came from community boards and were compiled by whoever is.
Right, but if you remember, Sean, the agencies kept saying the MMR, the MMR, the MMR, because a lot of your questions are already a part of the MMR. And that's where you get stuck. Then you don't see anything beyond what is repetitive information that's accessible through the MMR. And I'm not saying that across all the questions, it's just a lot of your time is spent on the MMR. So I just wanted to share that because that's why I wanted to participate in the first meeting, to see, observe, understand the interaction, and I wanted to just share that.
I think a lot of the frustration is that we have identified, I know on my board, we have identified these capital projects that are in need of infrastructure repair. And we're not getting that information from the agency, so we kind of skirt the issue on site-specific locations. For example, street reconstruction projects, even down to the trenches. I haven't been told what's trench and what's not. So I have to be like a detective to identify these needs. And year into year, they're not being funded, and I go back to the agency, to policy, to ask me, well, why wasn't this funded? It has been identified.
So now, did you take that funding request and apply it to the local council member process, the borough president's process?
Well, we will this year.
You will, right?
Yes.
But it hasn't happened, right?
Well, because these were capital, I don't even.
It is capital.
Right.
It's borough president, council member. But remember, the agencies will react where there's money. And if they're not prioritizing your request, because they have other requests that they've prioritized as an agency, then you have to find the funding somewhere else.
The problem is that they don't identify a capital plan. For example, DEP doesn't have a capital plan, it's all emergency. So how can we even fund it?
Because you know that there's a problem.